Okay, folks, here we go.
Here we go. Let's have a good show.
1B, stand by.
Yeah.
Yacht, stand.
Yeah,
Take it.
take it. And you
Take
just go
it.
right now. Go to camera 3. 3. Go to the perfect, just like that.
I'll just go ahead.
Yep. Graphics 2 is going to be up for the first. Okay.
Take it.
Go right now. Go to camera 3. Go. Yep. Go to the perfect, just like that. No music.
I'm going to hand to Q, Sophie.
Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it.
On radio in the Canal Zone.
All right, guys, mic check.
Yep. Go ready.
Okay, Ricky, mic.
Yep, I am ready.
Wait for it. Wait for it. 2.5.
Willie, mic check.
Yep, let's go.
1B, stand by.
10,
B, stand by.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Okay, and go for it, guys.
Panama days. Here we go, guys. 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific time, and of course it's 7 p.m. Canal Zone time. It's Happy at the Balboa Yacht Club. Happy Friday, Ricky.
Happy Friday, Willie, and to all our guests. As you guys know, today is Friday. But you know what, Willie, today is a special day because a lot of reunion stuff we can talk about today. And happy June, everybody.
Yes, and it's June 5th, right? So at the
June
beginning of the month, of course, we know
5th.
that Dave Dahlstrom, our Canal Zone historian, is going to join us. But also, Ricky brought up something interesting. It is Friday night. And if you go back to 1985, and this isn't a Canal Zone thing per se, right? But back in 1985, this date is infamous. And if you know it, throw it into the chat and we'll figure it out if you guys can know what this is. But later on, we'll throw it out there, but we'll see if anybody can come up with it. But
It's not truly a Canal Zone thing, but I think every Canal Zone person knows about this.
Yes,
But anyways, Thank you. Welcome to our happy hour every Friday. Happy hour at the Balboa Yacht Club. A podcast that's all about the Canal Zone. It's history, it's people, it's towns, it's social events, everything you need to know. We bring you the Canal Zone right to your living rooms. And tonight we have a history show. Our monthly Canal Zone history segment is on tonight with Dave Dahlstrom,
Yep, that's right.
who's going to be joining us in the K Pasa segment. So pretty soon. And he's ready to roll, Willie. So let's go. Let's get this show going.
Yeah, it's going to be
Learn
great,
about
guys.
civil affairs.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, salute to everybody. Cheers. Happy Friday to you guys. It is Happy Hour at the Balboa Yacht Club. But, Dave's episode tonight is of something that everybody's going to recognize. Although this thing had a lot of different roles in the Canal Zone and since then, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. He threw together a good set of graphics, so that's really exciting. Then, of course, we've got some announcements and some things going on in Panama, and then something that's kind of, we're just gonna have a brief conversation about because it's popping up in the news a lot all of a sudden. We knew it was coming, and
We've been informing you guys about it.
Right, exactly. But now it's really kind of upon us, and suddenly a lot of people are getting the attention to this, which is the Balboa train station is going to be no
The
longer here
demolition
pretty
ball
soon.
showed up.
Yeah. So Nodia Garcia, who's been on our show a couple of times, he has that PRR history show or channel on social media, and he's talked a lot about it. And interestingly enough, today we saw a notification on Sunday. So anybody in Panama in the zone on Sunday, there's supposed to be a gathering at the Balboa train station, and what they want to do is make a lot of noise and get attention to say, hey, this is a historical landmark. Don't demolish it, because the bridge that's coming over that new bridge, it's making a left turn when it gets into La Boca there. It's skirting right along Sosa Hill, which they're shaving a side of it off to accommodate it, but it's going down Roosevelt, right along the same way that we went past Balboa High School and all that. And part of that platform, as it starts to descend to get in there to link up with everything else.
We're at the airport, right there.
Exactly. And so it's, that area there where the Balboa train station is and all that.
That's a little spaghetti-looking thing.
Yeah, it's
right
gonna,
there. Yeah.
I mean, that train station, it hasn't been used in many years. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a facility that's been used for McDonald's and other things, but but it is an iconic facility. It's got a
Part of
unique
the
architectural
history.
look, and so it's
I mean
it's
that.
another reminder of the Canal Zone that
Yeah, the
that
train was
used to
there
be.
before the canal. I mean, come
Right.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. Before the Canal Zone. you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So
All right. Well, let's cheers to that train station. We know it's going
yeah,
to be a
salute.
goner, but
Great
let's give
memories
it
there.
one
We'll chat
last.
about that with Dave
Yeah.
here in just a moment. But let's get a couple of quick announcements because we do have, of course, the reunion is coming up, and so we got to talk a little bit about that real quick because I have had a couple of people ask me questions about the reunion stuff. So anyway, stand by, guys.
SCN Television presents K Pasa. And now here's this evening's host, Army Sergeant Bob Foster.
Good evening and welcome to K Pasa. We've got two guests tonight. First Sergeant First Class Jim Webb. Sergeant Webb's with the 227th Military Police Detachment.
Hi,
All
Dave.
right, here we go. And of course, there we go. Joining us right in the middle there is our friend Dave Dahlstrom, our Canal Zone historian. Is going to chit chat with us a little bit here, go over a couple of brief announcements, and then we're going to jump right into his segment. So, Dave, happy Friday to you, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for inviting me today. I've got a good show.
Yeah.
Happy to talk about it.
Right
Yeah,
on,
there's
right
a lot
on.
of cool stuff on there. I'm excited to see it because it's something that we're very familiar with, but it's had a lot of different looks to
A
it.
lot of different looks. Yeah. Right. Like
different
my
roles
age
and
group, it
stuff,
was the
so-
library. I'm sure
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
guys too, though. It was the library for us.
Absolutely.
It's been a few things. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. But right now, what we were talking about real quick, Dave, was the Balboa train station. Because that is a very, very sad moment that's upon us now. It seems they cleared out the McDonald's and all the furnishings and everything that was, I guess, the last, piece of commercial property that was working in there.
Yeah.
And-
I hope if they do take it down, someone can save those rafters that are in there and the tiles. Someone posted some photos of those things, and if they
Oh,
take it
that'd be
down,
great.
the next best thing would be is to preserve some of that stuff
To
and
preserve
reuse
some
it.
of that stuff. But we
Yeah.
all have such great memories of it. Like for the Balboa Ram kids and the Balboa kids, man, we always hung out there because they had the Mad magazines and they would
Yes.
let us read them.
Yes.
So we would get our 5-10 cents, go down there,
Mr.
eat.
Oyer, Melvin Oyer's dad.
We would get the gum. What was that?
Pepito.
Pepitos.
and Osito.
And
Osito was the hard
Osito.
candy one.
Yeah. And then if you remember that mafa that they had there, which is that twisted bread that we used
Yeah.
to crack your teeth,
Yes. Yes.
So a lot of memories for the Balboa kids, man. On that,
Yeah, it was. It really was. It was a place you hung out before you went to Balboa Rams practice. If you were anywhere in Balboa and you were congregating, you would congregate there, hang out there for a while, and then as it got to about 4 o'clock, hey, let's head out there, right? Because you want to be in your bleachers ready when that yellow truck
Right, the
comes in
softball park.
and Coach Cotton pulls in. But and then of course for baseball, some people would hang out there a little bit as well. But
Correct.
mostly it was-
Baseball
it
before
was
the
for
game.
football.
Stop there and get
then
your
of
gum.
course our Balboa Rams trips to Cristobal.
Correct.
We took the train, and that was a big deal for us as kids. You had the whole team on the train going across to the other side and getting off at Mount Hope, right? Catching the bus there to the football fields, and then returning later in the evening. And again, it was just a cool train ride to go to the Atlantic side. And
Yeah. We're
and
going to miss it.
It's going to go away. And this is again one of those reminders that the Canal Zone. Ricky and I were talking about it before the show. For us, the Canal Zone was a perfect place to live. It was just a wonderful place to grow up. There's so many great things to do there, and so many fun friends and neighbors and activities. And you really were well taken care of to grow up there. And then you look at and say, well, it was set up that way on purpose, right? The canal was there. The purpose of the canal was to serve world commerce secondary, but the truth is the canal was there to serve the United States and give them a way to get to two ocean military back and forth real quick. Okay. And so you put that in there, and in order to support this canal and have it working and functioning properly, you put in the Canal Zone, which was a U.S. territory designed fully to support the canal operation. And that's all you had there. Panama took it over. They had no need for the Canal Zone per se, right? They needed the admin building. They needed marine traffic control. They needed a few things here and there, but the rest of it really was just real estate.
Yeah,
And so they've taken all that down. The ballparks. Well, they didn't need a baseball parks there for kids, right? And that's parking for containers for their big, massive ports. And like Ricky said, he goes, hey, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, all of Balboa is probably going to be massive container areas because they're going to add more and more ports there as that just continues to
all
grow
along the
as
coast, right there.
Right. Yeah,
It's
certainly.
perfect for maritime, not for towns.
It
So
is, you know,
yeah,
and so the Canal Zone it ceased to exist officially in 1999. Some people will say 1979, whatever way you want to look at it. But now even the historical remnants of it are now disappearing as well. Little by little, they just get gobbled up and just torn down because again, it wasn't set up for an efficient, growth operation. It was simply set up to have a place for families to live and enjoy their life, so their spouses could run the canal. That's all it was. That's exactly what the Canal Zone was, and we were the fortunate ones that got to live there and grow up there, and so now what we have left is what we talk about here and in the other channels, and people post and celebrate. So
yeah, just like a industrial land and some towns. That's it, man. So, all
yeah,
right, well, that's what
now
this
we're
show's
feeling like the
for.
people that felt that at what is it, Red Tank and Gorgon and all those places. Progress got.
Oh yeah, a couple of weeks ago when they were
Yeah, we were
talking
talking about
about
that.
replacing those
Sure.
towns.
And some of the people are like, wait, I grew up there. When I was a kid, we grew up there, whatever. Well, but it's got to
Well,
go.
they knew those were temporary when they
Yeah,
built
that's
them.
true.
Yeah, they
That's
knew,
true.
right?
Although
In
some of
fact,
them were
in
there
fact, when
before
they
the Canal
started
Zone.
building, they would call them permanent towns. The
Yeah,
new permanent
true. That's
versus
true.
the
That
ones
was
they
a
knew were
David,
going to
differentiating
there's
name.
pack
some
up and leave.
there's some influencers out there that are twisting the story and making it
Yeah,
sound like they kicked the Panamanians and the blacks out because of that, for that
yeah.
I'll
reason.
do I'll do a story on that.
Yeah.
There's a whole process. There was a group that was set up. They basically landowners could file claims, and just like eminent domain, they would pay fair market value of the property. And people could protest, that evaluation was incorrect, and there was a board that
Sure.
met. And if you look at the early Canal Zone records, the board met and they discuss about which properties they had settled and such.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
there was a process for that, and people got compensated whether it was actually fair. I would imagine that the person getting money probably never thinks it's enough.
Right.
Right.
Um,
Always when
but
it's
Right.
eminent
Well, you're dealing
domain.
with the U.S. government. You assume that those are endless pockets,
yeah,
like
sure.
like a lot of people do.
But there
So
was there was a process, and you see the map out there that shows the various property owners. And again, there was a special board that was set up that would, you know, basically people could file claims, and then there would be a judgment on what the value was and what the payment would be.
interesting.
But I
Okay.
would
Looking
imagine
forward to
too,
that.
you had people too that didn't really have clear titles and stuff,
Sure.
and so then you ended up having problems where you couldn't prove that you own the land and all that
Right.
stuff. So
Right. And as we know, a lot of that was purposely done based on previous history with the French Canal, and especially I think this was at the insistence of Panama. A lot of that where they said, hey, we're not going to go through France failure 2.0 here, where you guys bail and all of a sudden we have all these people from the Caribbean that we now have to support, right? Because once
mhm.
the canal's over, these people didn't have jobs, right? It's not
Yep,
like they
yep,
had
exactly.
projects all over Panama City to go and work at, and so Panama didn't want to support them. The zone certainly wasn't going to support them, and so you take away people's homes. That's an easy way to get them to move back to where where they came from as well, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Well, they're
it
kind of
was
going through the
purposeful, and
same thing right now with Rio Indio.
yeah,
You know,
exactly,
they got to
exactly.
relocate all those people, and there's the group that wants to demonstrate, and then there's the group that takes the money and etc.
Yeah,
Hey,
no,
Will
I
and Ricky, I'm having a really hard time with your crackling on your microphones.
yeah, and I'm hearing the same thing when you talk. So I'm wondering if it might be on your end. So if you want to jump off real quick and jump back in and see if you're
All right,
connecting.
okay,
So
I'll do that.
All
yep,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's say hello to a
So
couple of folks here
yeah, let's
while
say
he.
that's what I was gonna say. I'm looking over here. We got a lot of people to say hi to.
Yep, Jim, good to see you as well. Looking
Hello,
forward.
Jim.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that as well. My son and myself are heading out on Sunday, the 21st, in the evening, Father's Day, to Toronto
Hmm?
to watch the Panama Croatia game. I was fortunate enough to get
Yeah,
tickets for
everybody's
that one.
heading out. My two little brothers are heading out to
Yep,
Toronto as well.
yep. So, they're gonna catch the
Raina
Croatia
and
game.
Ronaldo are heading there with Lourdes. They're all
Very
gonna
cool,
hang out.
very
Lourdes
cool.
lives up there,
Okay,
not in
good, good.
Toronto. She lives in Ottawa, but I guess that's close
Close enough.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. Well, good. I'll try and make it a point to see if I can't run into them, because I know a couple of my cousins are going to be there as well, and a good crowd of people. I've
Yeah, I'm
been
sure
seeing
you
a
guys are
lot
all
of
running
social
to each other
media.
there. Yeah.
It's going to be a blast. I'm really, really excited for it. We saw Panama play over the weekend here against Brazil, and yes, they did get trounced. Okay, however, looking at it objectively, the first half, which is really what you want to gauge the two teams by, because
They
that's
looked
when
good
they
in the
had their
first half.
starters.
Yeah.
In
They
the
looked
second
good.
half, it was more about let's see what else we have here, because if I get into a situation, who am I going to put in for XYZ, right? And that's really where Brazil just ripped Panama open. But it's Brazil, right? Let's not kid ourselves. We're Panama's got a good team.
Yeah, we
They've
were
really
playing
improved,
Ivory
but
Coast.
right, but we're not suddenly, we're not going to be competitive against Brazil. We're not there
But we did
yet.
pretty good. We did pretty. We
I
did
think we
score
did.
2 goals on them. Not many people scored 2 goals on
Well,
Brazil at their home stadium. So
correct.
we'll take that flex.
And here's the thing about it: the one concern that Panama has, and there is a concern about them having an older team, right? It's not the youngest team out there, but the coach is being more pragmatic. He's going with a team that's been there, the team that has some experience. They've played together, and what he's hoping for is to avoid a lot of goals and come back and counterattack. They do have some fast players on that team, so that's kind of their goal. But even against Dominican Republic, which they won, yesterday 4-2, uh, their defense is looking very,
The one guy in
very
the middle,
shaky. Yeah, and
Escobar.
he's the anchor. He's the one that's been the stalwart there, and so that's more of a concern, because Ricky and I earlier in the week and even last week, we're having a debate about this guy Kadir that didn't make the starting lineup, and truth be told, at this point, Panama, whether this guy makes it or not, if you're giving up 3 and 4 goals a game, Panama's not a high scoring team. So, I think if they need to focus on anything, it's that defense, because it is a little concerning right now. But
yeah, I'm disappointed my boy didn't go, man. I was a
yeah,
big fan of Kadir. Oh well.
but I'll tell you what, even when he did, because he played against Brazil and he played against Dominican Republic. All right, and he is on the reserve squad. So if somebody does get hurt,
Yeah, he's on the reserve squad.
he's
Definitely going to be on, because the kid scored twice already for Panama
Yeah, but that being
in very
said,
few minutes that he's played.
in Brazil, watching him play, you could see where he's not the finished product yet, right? And given the
All right, we're going to get in an argument. Let's move on.
it's yeah, but anyway, the World Cup is upon us. It starts next week, middle of the week, guys.
But there is
Should be a lot
one
of
more
excitement.
practice game. I think it is tonight, though.
Probably
against Bosnia Herzegovina, which is a good team, and
that's
they
actually a
are
team that's in the World
similar
Cup as well. Yes,
and they're similar to one of the teams that we're playing.
they're similar
which
to
is
Croatia.
Croatia.
Absolutely, very similar. In fact, they're neighboring countries anyway. But I still liking Panama's chances. I'm still hoping that Croatia has some tired legs. Ghana, I saw them play the other day. I watched them play. Who was it they played?
Well, we have a chance because their coach is doing this. We're not bringing the stars because they never played with us during the warm up, not the warm up games, but the classifying games,
qualifying games, yeah,
the qualifying games. So if the coach sticks to that, then we have a chance, because they've got the lesser guys, so to speak.
Well, and here's the other thing about Ghana that people need to pay attention to. They just brought in this manager about a month ago. They made a change last minute, and he brought a whole new system in.
Oof.
And the thing about international
stars.
soccer, unlike club soccer, these guys don't practice together a lot, right? They get together just on occasion for international breaks, for qualifying games for the World Cup, but they're normally playing for their own clubs. And so you bring a bunch of guys in and try and teach them a brand new system and hope they implement it. Good luck, right? And so that's where I'm hoping that Panama will pull off an upset against Ghana, which I think they can. And
Good
then just
luck
hold off the
and
Croats.
good morning from Japan.
Yes, Akira, good to see you, man.
Mr. Akira, thank you very much. Good to see you again.
Good to see, absolutely. Akira, he joined us. Speaking of the railroads, he came on one time when Nodier was on and talked about he had been doing some research history on the first delegation of Japanese that were going from Japan to Washington, to start diplomatic relations with America.
Yep.
And rather than cross the continental U.S., because back then you still didn't have the railroad and everything else, so it was actually easier to take that route through Panama and take a ship to Panama and get the railroad.
You can now fly directly between Japan and Panama.
As a matter of fact. A good little plug there for for Japan, Panama
Oh, that's
travel.
great
But
relations.
it is.
Yes,
And that's a
McDonald's
long ways.
they closed, so that's why eminent domain is going to win the game on with the train
is.
station guys. So
It is. But for what it's worth, guys, on
like
Sunday
Dave
there's supposed
said,
to
try
be
to
a
get a
get-together.
tile, try to get something out of
Something.
it.
Yeah, try and recoup something from it, and if not, go there and make some noise. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely go make some noise for the
Yeah, nothing to lose, honestly.
nothing to lose.
Mag-
All
magazine
right, what we got
read.
here?
Of course you
Bienvenidos. Thank you, sir.
would.
When
Good
Dave
to
is
see you,
on, we
Jim.
need to show that again because we
By the
have to
way,
agree
guys,
with
we
you.
managed to raise $245 for Jim
Wow.
Duffus for that golf tournament. So
Right
right on,
on.
guys. Well done,
Right
everybody.
on, man.
on
We
that.
got a hole and a half.
Yeah, so we'll get
Man Magazine, I got Playboy. Yes, of course. We all
Of
saw.
course.
That's what we would go see. I just didn't want to say that live, Leafy. But
Right,
yes, that's where all the
Leave it to
boys
Leaf.
got to get a sneak preview.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly
And that guy would let us, man. He was the best. Mark Cicero. Good evening,
Good to see you,
everybody.
Mark, I got that app done. I tested it this morning. I'll get it out to you either tonight or tomorrow. And then we'll
Yep.
jump on the call and try and figure it out. So
Duke Gibbs, our very good friend. Hello, Mr.
Mr.
Paul.
How are you, man? From Clayton. Ciudad
From
de
Clayton,
Saber.
yes, ACP, mi amor. Yes, they do. And Willie, we were talking about this earlier. You know what they're starting now to develop. If you guys can remember where SCN Canal Zone was in Clayton, the hill behind it that wraps all the way around to like Clayton. I mean, wraps all the way around to
Cardenas.
Chiva Chiva.
Yes, Chiva Chiva. That's right. Because
So it'll start at SCN and then Chiva Chiva. All that's being developed, guys. It's going to be all apartments, houses.
Well, it's funny because, like Paul saying there, ACP has more real estate than PCC
Yeah.
ever had. And you know what they're realizing? The value of the land there.
And you know what? There's private developers. How did they get to buy that? I let's not get into that, but yeah. We're losing the canal. We're losing our canal.
Hey, there's money to be made here, man. Let's buy up this land, say it's needed for canal operations. And
yeah, they're saying some doctors
later.
got involved there. Feliz Viernes, Laurie. Thank you. It is Friday.
Yeah,
they're going to widen the road. Oh,
Okay,
that's
right
what
on.
they're doing as
Makes
well.
sense.
Got you.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
well, little by little, they're just taking it all away,
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
it is what it is,
So
guys.
it's part of the changes that go on, right?
Part of development, part of
change
progress.
is what happens, but that's what we're here for, to celebrate it and go and reminisce and remember all those great times and great places that we all had to
Absolutely,
got to
sir.
grow up in. It's so sad to hear our demolition of the Balboa. Yeah, it really is, because that one, especially like I said, Akita, we a lot of us grew up in Balboa. We played football. That was probably the biggest sport there, American football.
Right behind was a field.
And it's exactly on the other side of that train station, from the other side of the parking lot, was an actual football field, a practice field. And so a lot of us, the big team there was the Balboa Rams, and a lot of us grew up in that area playing there, and we all got together at that train station. And then, once a year we would travel to Cristobal to play the football team there, and we'd all take the train as a football team, which was as a little 9 or 10-year-old kid with a bunch of football players and cheerleaders and coaches there. It was just a lot of fun, and it's really big memories for us, and it's just another reminder that this was
And Mr. Kier, there was a tunnel for all the football players. So if you had a girlfriend, once we went into the tunnel, you can sneak in a kiss. And we all did, by the way.
Everybody was all being cool and stuff, but you knew as you're getting
Soon as we got to that tunnel, man, we were sitting next to you.
Yeah, all of a sudden you got to move. All of a sudden you see a bunch of people moving seats real quick before the tunnel. You know why? That's so true. Good call.
Yes,
Good call.
traditions.
Yeah, it is sad, and it's an iconic place. It's recognizable, and so it's just another reminder, guys, that the Canal Zone, as much as it says it's easy forever up there, it's forever in our memories and in these types of shows and places where we can capture some of that stuff with pictures and stories and everything. So if you have any stories, any memories, any funny stories about the train station, one of the ones that I think everybody who spent any time at that train station, you put a coin on that track.
I was just gonna say, if you didn't put a penny or a nickel or a dime on that track, you're not from Balboa.
So
I can recall 3, 4, 5 of us lining up, putting our coins down before the baseball game, just waiting for that train to come by and then grab your scratch coin.
Yep, that's exactly right. That was a tradition. That was part of that Balboa train station. That memory, that lore that it has. Yeah. Good evening, Bill. Good to see you. Yeah. So it's going to be. It's
Buying
gonna be
Ositos.
come and go.
Yes.
Ositos, yes, yeah.
It's like they were
Ositos
like
were
a
remember they were the hard candy ones that they had the gum inside them,
yeah, you had a
and Pepitos were
everything
just
that we ate back in the day were all, teeth crackers, man. Like that
but
mafa, that thing was hard as heck
remember
too.
rock candy? People ever saw
Damn
people
rock
make rock
candy
candy bring
and
it to school? Yeah, that was
sweet
good.
tarts.
The
That's
sweet
all
tart,
that
that's
stuff
right.
was
That was the
crack our
Morris's
teeth.
house, man. That's where you got all the goodies there.
You know how I found out why they always had all the goodies? Because Mr. Morris was in charge of ordering everything at the commissary.
Yeah, he was the commissary manager, wasn't he?
Yeah, so that's why they had all the good stuff. I mean,
So
they
they had the
had
connection to order the stuff on the side for the. I love it. That's great. Yeah, because that
Yeah,
was the place to go,
I
man.
lived next door to them,
yeah,
and
you did across this.
they would get products to test, and so every once in a while they'd they'd give us some to say, hey, let us know how you like this stuff,
That's so
and give them
Yeah,
some
yeah,
cool.
a
feedback
whole
on what
neighborhood because
what they're
I got a
ordering.
lot of that. I got into a lot of that stuff because the Casorlas live right next door, and I hung out with the
Yeah.
Casorlas
So
and the
who else?
Gares and the
Who else down the
Hines and the
road?
Summers and the Dahlstroms and the
Remember down the
Woodruffs.
road, you'd go down Las Cruces towards Balboa, towards Barnaby, and you make that right. Okay. Was that what was that? Was that wasn't Carr Street, was it?
Wait,
Car
say it
Street.
again. You're going down
It was Car
Barnaby?
Street.
Yeah, going down Las Cruces, and you make that
Okay,
right on Carr Street.
okay.
There was a house there, and whose house was that? If you remember, whose house was there where you get the popsicles?
Ooh.
On
There was the Raybers that had popsicles. No, they
Ravens
had the
did
hard
as well, but
candy.
this one was right by the school, by
Oh, Merla and her
Yes,
little brother. That's right,
Hanson.
Merla. That's right there by the gym.
Yes, Merla Hanson.
That
You get
was
the
on the
popsicles
corner of Morgan and
Yeah, yeah. It's like
and
we had
Coors.
all our
or was it Morgan? I don't
stores.
think it
We
was
had our
Morgan, yeah.
our rock candy store, our sweet
Yeah.
tart store.
That's cool. Oh, I love it. Canal Zone memories. Canal Zone
Zone
memories.
memories.
But speaking of Canal Zone memories, obviously the one place where you can definitely get a lot of Canal Zone memories, the one place where the phrase "Do you remember" is uttered more than anything else for a whole weekend is, of course, the Pan Canal Society reunion. And it happens every July. This year it's July 8th through the 11th, I guess it is. And so last week was the deadline to sign up, but that doesn't mean you can't. That just means that would give them enough time to get room accommodations, etc. You can still reach out to them, call up, and make sure your membership's up to date. They'll put you on the list, and if they have room, which they typically do, of course, as you get closer to date, it's going to be a little tougher. But don't think that if you didn't register by the 29th that you can't go. That's not the case at all.
And it is a big place, but there's always multiple
Yes.
conventions going on. So
Time of the year too.
yeah,
Right.
don't
It's
expect the rooms to
summertime,
always
so
be available.
correct. But people have gone to the reunion, showed up on a Friday, register at the society right there, pay for your membership and pay for everything, and they're able to accommodate you. So it's not a no one way or the other. But if you're interested in going, you're planning on going, make sure you get that taken care of. Oh, thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you so much. Right on, guys. Richard. Thank you,
Hey,
Richard.
Richard Barker, guys, if you're not friends with him on Facebook, he posts a ton of Canal Zone pictures.
Right
I mean,
on.
every couple of days he'll post another great picture, another great memory. It's really
Come
cool
to
to see.
Instagram.
Yeah,
Where's
Another
Peaceful?
class of '83.
there you go.
Yeah. Oh, he's a Balboa kid too. He grew up with me.
He did. He was one of the Albrook Jets
Yeah,
guys.
we taught him how to play football and everything. Then he became a general or something, man. He's like a badass army guy.
He does
From
have
all
a
the Balboa
lot
beating that he took, man. Right on, Mr. Barker, man.
No,
Because he did. He played football with us. He was the smaller guy, but he was pounding it down with all of us.
He did. And wasn't his dad a teacher?
I believe so.
Yes, I believe it was maybe like an art teacher. I want to say maybe or something. I'm not sure, but if you're in there, if you can chime in the chat, feel free. But thank you again for helping out. Much
Right
obliged
on, man.
there.
I love
we
it,
had-
man. Thank you.
here, we had the Los Rios Corzal Popsicle Market. Okay, right on. Yeah, all the neighborhoods had that. Had the person that sold that stuff. It was a
The
little
popsicle market, man. Yeah.
little extra cash here and there, and if not, then you just went into under somebody's house and turned the hose on and drank the water off of there, right? And
Absolutely. That's the way it was. You just grab the hose, whoosh, drink your
Yeah.
water, move on.
100%. But anyway, so Pan Canal Society reunion. Make sure you get that taken care of. Make sure that you get your membership taken care of. It's $60 for the year, guys. It's a bargain. You get a lot out of it. It'll pay for itself at the reunion just from the discounts anyway. But make sure you do it because that's the Pan Canal Society really does a lot to to help keep this
To
Canal
keep
Zone
this,
memory
yeah,
going.
going,
You know,
yeah.
they and,
I
and
mean,
they,
they
you
are
know,
the key element of what started and what's maintained it.
right. And it's
Now
not just
we've come in at the end part,
right.
and it's
Yeah.
growing from there. So they're the seed that started all this.
No, and it's like Ricky likes to say on occasion, the OG, because they've been doing this for
They're
a
the
long
OGs.
time,
Yeah, yeah,
and and it's not just the nostalgia and the fun and the great memories. They actually serve a purpose, and in fact, that's one of Dave Dawson's roles with the Pan Canal
I know he
Society is
never
on the
talks about it.
legislative end of it. So, give us kind of a little bit of a background of what you do there and what that is as a service for the society members.
Well, they have a position, and it has a couple of roles. One of them is it's to inform the membership of any changes in the bylaws, and so and then also to monitor legislation that might impact members. Of course, if you were a Pan Canal employee, your federal um, retirement and stuff was very important and stuff. But a lot of us, we're not federal employees, so it's not really the same. So we have I write a quarterly article, and I try to highlight different parts of federal legislation that's either has been passed or is being considered. Most recently, there's been a lot of um, um, interest in the Panama Canal, the Agent Orange legislation.
Right.
There's been some senators that have proposed some legislation to add Panama to the list of assignments that can get benefits for the exposure to Agent Orange. And so
It's
we
interesting you
wrote about
bring
that
that up
last time.
because one thing that I have noticed, and maybe it's just coincidental, and who knows, but I've often thought that there seems to be a lot of instances of Alzheimer's and dementia in
Yeah.
Zonians. And so I often wonder with everything that went on and so much proximity to the military and the military, not to knock around on the military or anything, but they do have a track record
Well,
of throwing stuff around.
just
you know.
what's the iconic photo of all the kids running behind the DDT truck? I
Right.
mean, come
Yeah.
on, I mean, we had a lot of dangerous stuff there. If the military was testing Agent Orange, if we had a nuclear ship that was parked out there
Right.
doing stuff, we had a lot of things that potentially could have impacted our environment and
Right.
had some negative impacts on us. And you do hear about a lot of people having some serious diseases, and it could be just because of the exposure that we had or they had in their particular jobs. And right now the federal government isn't recognizing that,
Right.
even though it's been documented that they did in fact test it. They try to deny it, but I think there's
Sure.
enough evidence there to show that it's there. And it's just a matter of the federal government doing the right stuff,
Yep.
and people are trying to push it. And so that would be one of the things that if it passed. But
Yeah, and
so I write
recently there
different
was
about different topics. If there's something that's interesting to you, you can let me know, and I can do some research. But a lot of times it's what the cost of living COLA is going to be for you know retirement or some other change in federal
right.
benefits. And now there's been a lot of changes at the federal government with reducing services at Social Security and other types of things, and people that are trying to sign up for that stuff are having difficulty because they
Sure.
closed a lot of field offices. They closed a lot of
Right.
the telephone lines, and people are frustrated that they spend 8 hours a day on the phone and not get anywhere.
Yeah.
So it impacts people. And then they've had changes in the servicing of those accounts over the decades, and people get confused and wonder what's going on. And so
Yep.
we try to monitor things that might impact Zonians and be of interest to them. But that's my role.
Yeah. See, and that there again, guys, $60 a year, you have somebody that will actually, you know, be on the lookout for things that impact you, especially if you're a retiree from the zone, that's going to impact your benefits, right, and your monthly, payouts and things like that. And so, it's again, guys, it's not a lot of money for what you're getting out of this. You're getting it in. I mean, a couple buck and change a week, man, is a bargain to get this kind of service. And then again, if you go to the reunion, just the cost of those rooms and the discounts on the food and everything, you'll have covered your $60 probably in one day. So definitely take advantage of it and help the society out because they do a great job to keep this.
Yeah,
This
because the
reunion.
Friday night at the reunions when everybody really goes to the restaurants, and that's where you
Correct.
get your 25%
Yeah,
discount
that
right
Friday
there.
dinner can listen. That dinner alone, you'll probably get a $20 discount off of that, 20 or thirty
Hmm.
dollars right there.
Hmm.
On your drinks, you'll get that stuff. If you like to drink beer,
No, not on alcohol.
oh, not on alcohol.
Not on
Okay.
alcohol.
Not
Yeah.
in
Um,
some places.
Okay, so it is in
Like
some
a
places, but the other thing
yeah,
is
like
on
at the
Saturdays, if you like to drink beer, Saturday pool party, they, for
That's
society
free. Yeah.
members, you get the beer there.
free beer.
You can drink $10 or $15 at a resort worth of beer pretty quick.
Yeah, and
But
that's sponsored by our sponsor,
yes,
Howler
yes,
Monkey.
yeah. So definitely, it's just a great organization. It's been doing this for a long time, keeping the Canal Zone and that memory going and keeping us front and center. So nice work on that there, Dave. But again, going back real quick to the society, and then Ricky's got just a couple of things on the Bochinche side of things. It's been kind of a low,
Amazing that we had a
you know,
week with
right?
very little news
Been like a
coming out of the
holiday week or
Canal
something,
Zone on
you
Panama.
know.
Wow, I was
But
impressed.
don't forget, guys, at the reunion Saturday night, especially. Okay, they're having the Tivoli soiree. Okay, and this is going to be a really big deal. It's a formal party. They're bringing back that dress up fun gathering, but it does include two parts: the dinner and then the music and dance afterwards. You can attend both if you want, or just one of the two. A lot of the graduating classes I know are buying blocks of tickets to sit together, and have dinner together as part of the festivities and everything. So, pancanalsociety.org is where you can check that out, get that information, and find out if your graduating class is going to be there getting together, and then plan on getting together and have that dinner with them as well. And then of course look at your Friday night graduation activities also. And then what else? What else? The Saturday party. Paul Shamel is going to be there. Remember, he was with us here a couple months ago. Was talking about the special forces and the naval special forces. He's got a great book out, part of a
he
trilogy of
he
books.
parachuted into the Canal Zone for the first time, landed in front of a freaking ship
Yeah,
at night.
at night, exactly. Yeah, talk about a welcome to Panama,
Yeah,
right?
welcome to the Canal Zone. Now get
Yeah.
out of the ship's way. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
exactly. And the
Great
irony of that,
story.
because as a Navy SEAL and these guys, when you do these things, the idea is to not be seen, right? And so they're in the path of this ship, and these guys on the ship have no clue that they're about to run over a bunch of Navy SEAls. And so it was just ironic that that's his introduction to
Yeah, it
Panama.
was
But
great that he came on our show and
yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a
gave
great
a
show. But he was going to be at the reunion.
peek preview of what's coming at the
Yep, he
reunion.
will be taking some books, but if you get a chance, order it on Amazon, take it there, and he'll sign it for you, and
Hmm.
get some pictures taken with him. Great guy. He was a lot of fun. He had a lot of great information there. So don't miss him. Of course, a lot of vendors go to the at
Yeah.
the reunion, get a lot of good stuff there as well. And
Yeah, Willie, I like to talk. I like to post this thing here by Carl Burke. I don't know if you guys can see it there at the bottom,
yeah,
scrolling
right.
through.
Yeah.
He says there was a tip about going down the hill of Sosa Hill. So you remember we would normally go by ourselves, but every once in a while, your little brother, somebody wanted to go with you, right? So
So
he
they were
wrote
the admin.
at the end. So he wrote a poem about that. This riding double can be big trouble. So you sit first. Driver gets it worse.
Ah,
And that
it's
was
so
true because the first guy had to pull up on the
Yes.
on the deal. And when you ate it, man, you went on top of him.
Because it was, when the best time to go would be in the dry season.
Of course, yeah.
Because that hill was hard as a rock then, man, and you'd get some speed, man. Every so often that rock would come and hit you, but yeah, that was fun, man.
But if you didn't pull up the front, you would go X.
Right.
If you pull up the front, you would go like 3X on speed. You would
Yeah.
go a heck of a lot
Yeah,
faster.
no kidding, no kidding. Good times, man. Good
Yeah.
times on the admin hill there.
So I
For
like
sure.
that about Carl. I saw that on his book.
Yeah.
Share it with everybody.
All right, Ricky, what do you got going on in Panama?
Well, on the zone, guys. I mean, in the Bochincha segment of tonight, not very much. The Chinese and the Panamanians are working things out for the port, so there was not much coming out of there. The big news in the Canal Zone was the train station, and of course, the soccer team getting ready. So we didn't really have much here to inform you guys, other than what we've been talking about all night. And
Yeah, the only other piece of news I do remember that came out earlier in the week, there was a prison breakout in Panama.
is that the one in Gamboa?
I thought it was in
No.
No.
I think it was in East, like near Darien or something. What in Chepo or I think near Chepo. I want to say out by
Chimp.
Tocumen maybe or something.
Yeah, something like 196 guys
Yeah,
escaped,
and
and there's
they
still a whole
caught about
bunch
half of
out
them like
there.
after the first day or something. But I know that there's still more there, and apparently that's really kicked off a lot of conversations of building and adding more prisons in Panama apparently or something. But it was quite the prison escape. I mean, 200 people or close to it's a that's a
Yeah,
breakout, man.
China replaced their ambassador. I mean, not replaced it for bad reasons. That her time was up, so we
Right.
had that going on. So really a quiet week of
It
news
has been.
coming out of Panama.
Yeah.
Last week was a really big news with the new administrator and all that, but
Yeah.
this week was rather quiet.
Yeah, so but they, that's where Panama is. So, but that doesn't mean that we don't have exciting things to talk about here because what we're going to talk about now is as we've been talking about all these changes to the Balboa train station and stuff, we're going to talk about a place that some of you guys are going to recognize from the first graphic that pops up. You'll recognize this place instantly from that image, but it has a lot of history before that. And we're talking about the Civil Affairs building. So we're going to have our Dave's going to switch hats from hanging out here talking about some canals and stuff to giving us some canals on history here. But let's give him a proper introduction here. Hang on, guys. Right, so there it is. So that ends with the Albrook Field, and of course that train station, which will soon be disappearing
Yeah,
here.
it'll be gone. Wow.
But as you can see, guys, that image there is actually a stained glass, a beautiful stained glass piece, and that's our Civil Affairs building. So Dave, take over, man.
All right, guys. This is something I'm really excited to talk about. This stained glass, I think it's an iconic piece of the Canal Zone. If you saw it, you know exactly where this is. I know as a kid, going to the Civil Affairs building, the library, walking up the stairs and seeing that, I was always amazed to see it. And I was very excited to see there's a website called canalzonebydesign.com, and the image on the front of it, it's actually a window cling that you can take off and put on a window, and then the sun will shine through it. And it's a replica of that stained glass that was in the Civil Affairs library building.
Oh, very cool.
And so it just kind of made me think about, I knew that building had other purposes in the past, and I wanted to do a segment about who designed that stained glass, what did it mean? Let's find out about the history of it. And so I kind of have to go way back to the beginning of air flight in the Canal Zone to get the true story of how that building got constructed and how it became a library and other things that we remember, the drive-in and other types of uses there. So I'm going to run and do a history of the flight in the canals, and then end up at Balboa Library, and just kind of give you the history of all the things that went on and what transpired to make that happen, and who designed this thing and who made it happen.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, my memory of this building, of this location, was the library itself, and in particular that ship, that
Mhm.
beautiful model ship. And I'll leave it at that because I'm sure you're going to
Yeah,
talk about it here. But that was always one thing that if I walk past it 100 times, I stopped 100 times to look at it. It was one of those
yeah,
just
yeah.
captivating.
And I was really really surprised to find out how controversial that building was to Panama. And when you read it, it's like this was one of the things that really got under the skin of the Panamanians, and showcased the I guess say the lack of sovereignty that they felt that they had, and the overbearingness of that the Americans were yielding over them on certain ways to get around the country and stuff. And it's interesting to hear and read because it's something that I never heard of. I mean,
Right.
I knew it had been an airport, but other than that, I really didn't know
Just
any
an
of the
airport.
history of it. Yeah.
How does an airport become political
So I'm
strife?
going to tell you how it got there and how it turned and some of the things that happened over that. Just kind of give you just a different perspective of this iconic building and this stained glass that was there at one point.
Right on. Right on.
All right,
Well,
so
perfect. Well, let's go
let's
ahead and
go.
move along then.
All right, so I'm just going to go back and start with 1912 was the first time that there was an air flight over the Panama Canal, and we talked about this in previous sessions. But air travel, air flights. The Wright brothers' flight was just a few years earlier, so
Right.
airplanes were very, very new, but they were getting popular, and people were really intrigued by them.
Sure.
And people would go tour the countries, would fly their plane and do shows, and people would come, hundreds and thousands of people would come and watch these machines. They did a big expo at the Panama Pacific Expo in San Francisco. Um, so airplanes was that new technology, and people
Yeah.
were really excited about it.
Remember, you
But
had the barnstormers, even in the states. There was places where people would
barnstormers, yeah,
flock
all
to
that
simply fly
stuff,
an airplane around.
yeah, right. But automobiles were even new around that time too.
True.
So
True.
so these were new technologies that when the canal was started and was under construction, these things didn't exist.
Yeah.
So no one was thinking about the impacts of airplanes because it was all about the ship. And the
Sure.
ship the reason they're building the Panama Canal was for military purposes.
Right. Certainly was.
We needed to get our warships through, and then they decided, we have to widen our canal a little bit because the ships are getting a little bit bigger. So that was really the focus was on the ships. Um, but there was an effort to bring airplanes down to Panama. There was a prize that was given, and someone trying to be the first to fly across the isthmus. And there was a camera crew that did it, and I've showed some images before, and you can actually go online and see some images from their trip flying over the Canal Zone, 1912, 1913. And when they got over to Limon Bay, they started on the Pacific. They ran out of gas and they crashed in the water, but it's
Of
only like 3 feet
course.
of water and stuff. But they were able to save themselves and get out there. But that was the first time they had a flight, and then because of the military concerns of the canal, these guys they got their film was confiscated, and these guys were arrested because they were taking pictures of U.S. military installations that were being installed, and that was illegal.
Isn't
And
that funny? And it shows you how little communication you had back then. Because
mhm,
here, these people are $3,000 is no chump change back in
yeah,
1912. So if
right.
you're gathering that kind of money and setting up this big contest, and nobody bothers to go, "Hey, Uncle Sam, you okay with us flying over the canal?" And
Yeah.
turns out
So
they're like, "No, dude, you're
these
fine."
guys, they got charged with espionage.
Yeah,
They're
that's what I'm saying.
spies for doing this and publishing it. They published it in this magazine called The Sunset, and then it even talks about, is the Panama Canal susceptible to
To
attack
aerial
from the
attacks.
air type of thing. But
Yeah,
it's all kind of a new thing. People were interested in it. But these guys just going to flying there over the Panama Canal first
that's
trip
hilarious.
ever, and they end up being charged as spies.
They're all excited
And
about all this
yeah,
glory, and instead they
they
all got a
they
criminal
did
record.
they did beat that charge. You know how?
Huh.
Because they determined that the presidential order about no photographs only applied if you were on the land, and these guys were in the air.
Little
Right, because the
technicality
laws
there.
hadn't caught up with
No,
the airplanes yet.
okay, that's
Wow.
okay. So if I jump in the air and take a photograph, I'm not charged. I mean, I don't know,
Right.
but
That's
anyway, it was just
brilliant.
that was one of the loopholes I guess they found to let these guys go. But I mean, that was serious. If you're charged
Censored.
espionage by the federal government, I mean that doesn't
Yeah.
happen every day. But anyway,
Well,
so
and
that's
we learned that was the one big peril of the Panama Canal was if you manage to breach those sources that hold back the water, the canal is done for years. right?
Right, 'cause
Because
the
it
lake.
takes forever to refill that
Well,
thing.
yeah, and we've talked about originally the locks were going to be they were going to create a Lake Sosa, and they were
Right.
going to have a dike between Corazal, the hill at Corazal, that's the like by Albrook,
Right.
all the way to Sosa Hill, and then Sosa going the other way. And that area was going to be a giant lake, and they would have
Sure.
a set of locks right there at the Pacific entrance. And then the Navy said that's too vulnerable to torpedo attack.
Right.
So they're like, all right, let's move it up the way. There were also some geological issues with all that swamp. You couldn't really have any bedrock to secure that stuff, and so it was very unstable.
Right.
And so they moved it up to Miraflores, but partly because it's a little bit offset that a torpedo, if you went straight from the Pacific, Miraflores isn't exactly straight off
Oh
the
yeah, there's
Pacific.
that
There's a
bend.
little bit of
There
a
is a bend, right?
there's a little bit of a bend, mainly to keep
The
torpedoes at bay.
Sure.
So it's always been a military thing, but it was always sea based attacks.
Correct.
Correct.
When they were building it, it wasn't air.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
things like this coming, and then all of a sudden, and the photographs are wonderful. You see all these old photographs of Naos Island, and they're constructing the fortifications up on the top of it. Beautiful photos.
Yep.
And
But I
where
would
is this
imagine if you're a
available
general
for?
putting that stuff in there, you're like, I don't want my enemy to see this.
Right.
Right. David,
Even
where is
see the
this
images.
available for viewing? This video?
Yeah, just on YouTube.
YouTube
I'll
has
find a
them, and
link.
of course, CZ Images has a ton of those pictures because they
Yeah,
became public images.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first aerial shots of the Canal
Yeah.
Zone. Yeah.
So just kind of moving on, this is just a little bit more in brief about the this publication that came out that they did on this trip. Can the Panama Canal be destroyed by the air?
Right.
And so it's just this new trigger about how the Panama Canal could be susceptible to attack.
A new
And
weapon.
and from what we're hearing and all the fortifications that they're put into, these guys were really scared that someone would want to attack
Yeah,
it because
certainly.
all this commerce, all these ships and stuff going through. It's great for the U.S. to be able to have ships going through ocean to ocean rapidly, and if you're the enemy, that's what you want to prevent.
Right.
So
Well, you remember when
it's-
they had all those destroyers? They had what
Yeah.
33 destroyers crossed in 48 hours. That's a massive show of power
Mhm.
that shows the rest of the world we can project military to either side of the globe quickly
Right.
with this Panama Canal, and so
Yeah.
it was the
So-
most protected thing you had out there.
Yeah, till today, guys.
So-
That has
Right.
not
So the-
changed.
Yeah.
So the president in 1913, presidential order that it was unlawful for any aircraft to operate in or across the canal zone without written authorization.
Yeah, because
And
they're
then
still
in
building
19
here, 1913.
Yeah. And then in 1926, they had a U.S. law that foreign military aircraft were strictly barred from the canal zone without Secretary of State approval.
Isn't that interesting?
Well, if you're Panama, and of course you didn't have a military, but anyone like that, all of a sudden you have another jurisdiction telling you what you can and can't do in your country. It's
Sure.
kind of like, and then you have to go to someone else. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, that's not what the treaty says.
Right. And think
And
about it.
so-
Just for example, let's say a Colombian Air Force plane wants to fly to Costa Rica. Well,
Right.
guess what? They have to fly around the canal zone because Panama's cool with it, but the zone says not over my territory, and
Yeah.
so it does create a situation like Dave says, where is it really our country when someone's not even allowed to fly? The airspace. I can see the
Well,
land.
listen,
but
even
the
today's
airspace
treaty
now.
says defense trumps anything.
Yeah, and all and
Well,
always
but that's the
canal,
thing.
yeah.
Everything just falls under it's a defense. And
gray
it's like,
area.
Even
you didn't even
the-
discuss it
the-
with us. You just passed this law,
Right,
and now
very
we have to
convenient
abide
gray
by
area.
it. You didn't even talk to us about it, or give us an exemption or whatever it is. So, let's go on to the next one.
And
So
all of
this-
this came about because somebody wanted to do an interesting race across Panama and publicize it, because otherwise nobody even thought about this.
Well, 26, they had World War One, and
Yeah,
then
certainly.
airplanes started to become a lot more
Yep.
sophisticated.
Right.
That's not a small
so-
area there, Willie.
Well,
A big area to go
okay,
around.
this is the other thing I love about AI. It's always
Yeah.
wrong.
oh,
But,
okay. I was gonna say
This is
that's
the
a big
hallucination we
area.
talk about.
But the U.S. did. But I like this graphic the best out of some of the others it came up with.
Right.
But basically they had a restricted area. You can see it doesn't even cover all the canals and it goes the wrong direction.
Yeah,
but
Tuna, like you can fly over that, dude. Don't worry about
but
that.
just the idea is that
Big
there's
side.
there was a large area.
A large area
Basically,
to go around. Yeah.
it included all the canal zone, and then it included like 3 miles above the canal zone as well.
Oh
And
wow.
so, like you
Okay.
were saying, if someone wanted to fly from Colombia to Costa Rica, you couldn't go over this area.
Right.
And and um,
Yeah. I mean, that's an incursion.
and
I mean, it does intrude on people's sovereignty. There's no
and so
answer
they,
about
they,
it. But there's a
like you
necessity.
said, Ricky, they were everything defense. Um, the canal was very concerned about defending itself, and so they put on these restrictions, with probably good intent, but also it ends up impacting others
Sure.
that may not have been in their calculation or didn't have any weight in there or little weight in there.
Sure. Well, that
More than
creates
In
likely, it
the
was
friction.
that they didn't have any
Yeah,
choice. It was just
Yeah.
yeah.
this is it. And
And I
that's
think
that.
I had read a passage from one of the generals back in the early days that was talking about defending the canal, and he said, "We need 50 miles on either side of it if we're going to defend it."
Of course.
So move
Well,
the
and that's why they got
move
all
the
those
capital to
bases.
David.
That's why
Yeah.
they got all those
That
bases
was
in
his
World War II.
recommendation before they
Yeah.
built the canal. Is that if you're asking us to defend it militarily, we need 50 miles on either
Sure.
side, and we can't have a civilian population in that area.
Well, think about that
Uh,
exercise out in Rio Hato, right? That
yeah.
was an air base.
So and of course we know that didn't happen. So you're constrained with things. All right, so go on to the next one. So just kind of moving on, and this is in 1920, 1920
4.
one. Let me that was double check what year that was.
24.
No, it was before that. I can't read my note here. 21. In 1921, Lieutenant Colonel Frank P. Albrook was sent to France Field on the Atlantic coast, and of course, everything in Panama started on the Atlantic coast.
Right.
Um, the They had this field on the Atlantic side, and it was basically just crushed coral. And we've talked about how like in Cologne, the land is really low, and there's a lot of rain, and so that field was always wet,
Hmm.
and it was really hard to land on it. And but they had to defend the canal, and planes would come. They had seaplanes that would land in the Folks River there around Coco Solo and stuff like that, and they had this small landing strip, France Field, and these planes that they had would go up and do air reconnaissance, and they could bomb. They had bombs on them if they needed to, but essentially they were for air reconnaissance. And in 1922, the U.S. established the Balboa Fill Field. We know it as Albrook Field, but they had used like in Balboa, they used a lot of that hydraulic fill from
Right.
the canal, and they put it all over that Albrook swamp. If you've seen those pictures of Albrook before, you know that it was a swamp, part of the Rio Grande and Corundu River and a couple others
Yep.
that ran through that area. So they put in millions of tons of hydraulic fill to fill that swamp. Then they put some dirt and then some Bermuda grass, and so that area was just basically turned into a field, and that's why they call some of these places airfields, is because it really was just a field.
And that's the
And
way
these
it was back in that day.
yeah.
I mean, you really didn't
so
have a lot of
they
paved airports.
so they assigned Lieutenant Frank P. Albrook to be the commander of the Balboa Field, and it became, even though it says the 7th Aero Squadron, that was his squadron at France Field, but they set up a new squadron, and it was called the 8th Airfield. And so Albrook Field was, before it was Albrook Field, was Balboa Fill Field, and it was home of the 8th Airfield. And Frank P. Albrook was the commander, and they would run reconnaissance on the Pacific End. They had the fortifications there, but they had an air squadron that could patrol and, that area. So going to the next slide here. And the type of planes that they were flying in that era in World War One and stuff was called the de Havilland DH, and basically it's a biplane. And these planes, they're very lightweight, not all weight to them, and so you could land a plane like that on a coral runway. You could land a plane like that on a sod runway, but of course, if it was wet and muddy, it became very challenging.
Yeah, those
But
planes were made out of wood and fabric. There was very
yeah,
little
wooden
metal on them except the
yeah,
engine for the
and
most
they
part.
they actually they called these things the flying coffins
Hmm.
because they could the way that the fuel system was set up, it could catch on fire and is very dangerous. But in 1924, um, Frank Albrook was sent to a air base in Illinois for training in some of these planes, and he got injured in an accident. This was in September of 1924, and then they sent him to Walter Reed Hospital for treatment. And then he died in the hospital on September 17th, 1924. And then November 11th, which was Armistice Day, now we call it Memorial Day,
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day. They named Balboa Field Albrook Field
Yep.
in his honor. This guy is a second lieutenant or a lieutenant, so I mean, he's not a high-ranking guy,
No.
but obviously he had, since he was the first there, I guess, but
Well, there's a thing about
3 weeks
lieutenants in
after.
Panama that you get a lot
Right,
of
the
fame
first
there.
guy that took it
Yeah,
over
yeah.
was a lieutenant.
That's a good rank to have in
Yeah,
Panama,
I mean,
apparently.
but apparently they thought highly enough of him and respect. But 3
Sure.
weeks after his death, they renamed this field after
Didn't
him.
take
So
long at
that's what
all.
Albrook is named after. Is the first commander of the squadron that was
Amazing.
assigned
The
there.
eighth, right? The eighth squadron.
Yep.
The eighth airfield.
He wasn't that good of a pilot. Couldn't land.
Eight-
He died trying to fly an airplane. So that tells you
So
what
I can't
Albrook
read my
was about
notes
there.
here. I don't know. It's I get down
Anyway.
to it.
Okay.
But I guess that's it. So that's his plan. Then later on in that decade, the war's over, and this airline called Pan Am,
You may have heard of them.
Pan Am, they were starting to be pioneers. Um, Charles Lindbergh had just flown solo across the Atlantic in 1927, May of 1927, and then in 1928 he went on a goodwill tour to South America. He flew through Mexico, down through some of the Central American countries, and then Panama, and then further south. And this is a picture of the Spirit of St. Louis, the plane that he flew to Paris, flying over the Canal Zone when he came down in 1929. And it was goodwill, and the but it was also a way to try to get airline travel down to South America. And so Charles Lindbergh was hired by Pan Am to kind of be an ambassador and also um, kind of figure out routes to get to different places. And the U.S. Was also interested in mail routes. We've heard that before with.
Yeah, the early days of aviation, that's really what established the airlines. It wasn't passenger travel. That was more of a novelty, but the mail was essential, and that was very, very
Right,
lucrative to get the contracts to run the mail. And that's what Pan Am,
right.
initially sent him down for, is to set those
Yeah.
up and then eventually
Yeah. So
passengers.
basically, the federal government was giving them an
100%.
incentive to
Yep.
to do this, and so that helped fund a lot of their capital to be able to do some of these things
Hmm.
that they were doing. But really, their intent was to set up a private um, airline to
Yep.
go
Set
to
up a
serve
network.
these countries, right? But they were using the federal dollars to help them do
Sure.
that. So there was some partnership, but I mean, the goal was to have a private company. And the first route that they set up for the mail route later was a Pan Am route from Miami to, and that went out of Dinner Key in Miami, and that's it's the city hall for City of Miami. It's the old airport there, but these were floating planes
Hmm.
that landed in the water, and there were Sikorsky S-38s. Sikorsky, of course, is the guy that made the helicopters, but before that, he made these float planes, and then they would fly 3 days a week down to Panama. They would land in on the Atlantic side at the France Field area. They had a Pan Am had a terminal there, um, and that's Lindbergh flew the first Sikorsky plane to Panama with the mail, and then took mail back up to Miami a couple days later. And so Charles Lindbergh actually had quite a history in Panama. He went there as a child. His dad was a congressman and went early on, and so as a boy, Charles Lindbergh stayed at the Tivoli and signed the guest book.
Hmm.
Oh, nice.
And then he came back as a pilot during this Goodwill tour, and then he came back as a pilot on the first mail tour. And so when he did his Goodwill tour in 28, he landed in an area of Panama City, and it still has the area is known as Campo Limburg, and it's out by
Okay.
Tucumán. It's not quite as far as Tucumán, but if you look on a map, you can see an area, and it'll say Campo Limburg,
Yeah, I
and
think I've
that's
seen that.
where
Yeah.
when he came to that's out by Old Panama, really. But when he came there, he landed in a field, and everyone went out to see him. And so there's still remnants of Lindbergh's legacy in Panama. Um, but he really had, he was one of the first, um, aviators, and he did a lot to set up Panama as the hub for future travel into
Absolutely.
Latin America. And of course, um, um, Pan Am wanted to enter into travel into South America, and they ended up having a monopoly of all air service in the whole Caribbean. And then they worked with another company that had been operating in South America called Grace Lines, and they set up a company called Panagra, and they could fly basically up to Panama, and that's as far as they could go. Then they'd have to transfer to Pan Am to go north, and vice versa. But they were all basically owned by Pan Am. So let's go on to the next one.
Okay. Here you go.
Which one we got here?
That's the Limburg, the Golden Age, which is
All
that Miami
right.
Panama route.
Okay. I just some of this is a little bit of we just talked about,
Right.
but he was he went on this tour, and he was mapping out air routes across.
Oh,
We
yeah, looks
lost
like we
David.
lost him. Yeah, he'll jump back in here. He was having
He
a bit of
will. He
connection
will.
The
problems.
There he comes.
airline that came across and delivered the mail to Panama, and that was a one of the first routes. And if you go, let's just skip that one. Go to the next one.
Right. And real quick, keep in mind, guys, that by this point, the Panama Canal is now a superstar. The world knows about the Panama Canal. It's big. World War One's over now. So we've had time to celebrate and get to know it. And so, going to Panama and traveling to Latin America now has become a big deal. And that's why this is kind of that golden age where it really started from that.
And the Tivoli was a big part of it too.
Yeah,
It was a
certainly.
it was a world-renowned hotel at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the Tivoli was hotel, and then later on with Pan Am. Well, I'll get to it as well. But there were a lot of celebrities and stuff
Right.
would come there, and they would use that terminal and stuff. But here's a picture of the Spirit of St. Louis, and it's hanging in the museum, and it's kind of hard to see in this graphic. But on the bottom right side,
Yes.
you can see the Panamanian flag, and it says the Spirit of St. Louis with the flags of all the countries that Charles Lindbergh flew. And so if you go and you find the Spirit of St. Louis plane hanging in the museum, it'll have a Panama flag hanging on it.
Nice.
And
How about that?
and that's the trip. These photos that you're seeing, that's that trip that he made. He made there. He
Ricky,
went there
we didn't
several
speak.
times, but one of them was on the Spirit of St. Louis. That's not something we learned about in school.
No, not at all.
We learned
for
about
sure.
his trip to Paris.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and he left from Roosevelt Field in New York, and that was named after Teddy Roosevelt's son Quentin, who had
Not
been a
Teddy
World War
Roosevelt.
One
Didn't figure
pilot
that out.
and was killed in the war. and so it's a Roosevelt, but it's the son of Teddy Roosevelt. So there's still a lot of connection between.
Yeah, and then you talk about going full circle with history because now you take a look at Panama and you talk about that hub of the Americas and the airlines and everything, and that's exactly what Copa Airlines has made Panama and just a
Mhm.
major airline hub. When you see Tocumen Airport, an aerial shot of it now, and you see no less than 50, 60 Copa Airlines planes there, and there's a really cool app out there called Flight Radar 24, and it's one of those where you can see all the airplanes flying around everywhere, and you know airlines travel in waves right throughout the day, and there's certain times of the day where you look all around Panama in the airspace, and there's 30 or 40 Copa planes either in the air that have just taken off or coming in
Mhm.
for landing, and it's pretty amazing to see, and maybe for myself because I worked for Copa when they had one aircraft, but it really has become a hub for anywhere in the Americas, from St. Lucia in the Caribbean, to go to La Paz, Bolivia. Your best connection is through Panama. One change of planes and you're at the
Mhm.
next place. It really Panama really has for 500 years, and I've said this 1,000 times, but it is such a perfectly located place, Panama, and that it's worked for the Spaniards 500 years ago with galleons. It's worked for the Canal 100 years ago, and today it still works for airlines all over America to go and use Panama as that hub, man. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Panama is now
Well,
known as a
go to the next
logistics
slide.
superpower.
Yeah, yeah, logistics superpower indeed.
Go to the
And
next
look
slide
at
because
that,
it'll show
perfect.
that it was a hub.
Yeah, no kidding.
That it was a catalog. It was a jumping point to all these places south. And
Hmm.
you look on the map and you can say, "Wow, Mexico City's really not that far." When you look at like how far Lima is and Rio
Right.
and Buenos Aires is, you know, those places are like twice the distance as it is to New York. I mean, but everything
All roads lead to
traveled
Panama.
back to Panama.
Yeah.
Everything came back to Panama, and then you had a law that said you can't fly over the canal zone and stuff. So I mean,
Isn't that ironic?
yeah.
Such a
So
critical place, and yet you restrict the flying over it.
all right. And that plays into what's happening next, which is Pan Am Airways gets this mail contract, and they scoped out their routes. They know that Panama is basically the place that everything needs to come in and out of. And this is the head of Pan Am Airlines. His name is Juan Tripp. And if you've
Mhm.
ever seen that movie, Catch Me If You Can, it
Yeah.
Yeah,
was the old what's the
Leonardo
Caprio
DiCaprio.
Leonardo
Yeah.
DiCaprio, and it talks a lot about how the Pan Am Airways was trying to get a monopoly on all the other airlines, and the guy was pretty ruthless and stuff, but basically Pan
Juan Trippe
Am.
was the Elon Musk of the 1920s when it comes to the
I
aviation.
want to say he's like the Al Capone of airline, but anyway, but again, it was all new,
Uh-huh.
but he was buying up other airlines and trying to create a monopoly, which he did. And but here he is. This is with Charles Lindbergh in Panama, where they're strategizing on how to conquer the world essentially with airlines. And so it's just something when I watched that movie, I had no idea that Panama was such a central point, and it didn't really play out in that movie, but that airline, how
Well,
important
my
it was.
before Copa Airlines, my mom actually she started her airline career at Pan Am and then moved on to Copa. And I remember my brother and I we were staying at my cousin's house in Maryland, and we flew home, and we were 8 9 years old, I think, and we flew home on Pan Am unaccompanied minors on a flight from Washington Dulles to Guatemala and changed planes there on Pan Am, and then caught a 747 to Panama, which you look at it now, you're thinking, my God, but that's the kind of traffic that Panama had, that they would fly a 747 between Guatemala and Panama to then go on into South America because it was such a big hub. Even in the 70s and 80s, it never stopped being that. Whether it was for one country or another, Panama is a hub, and it
Yep.
always will be. I think
So
it's
so let's
located
go
there.
on to the next one. Let's go on to the next one. So one of the airlines that had started up, it basically Pan Am started their business um, May 1st, 1929 in Panama. Isthmian Airlines started May 5th, 4 days later,
How about that?
and they had this the guy that it was a U.S. engineer that started it up. I think he was local, Ernest Sexton, and he had like four different float planes that they use. You can see some of them in the picture. They're at Pier 18 in Balboa.
Yeah,
Um, and they would land in Balboa Harbor. Of course, the bridge wasn't there at the time, so
sure.
it probably was easy to just float in there. But and you have to kind of excuse the graphic. I don't know where that art's going,
Yeah.
but um, but basically they had a stunt where they got a guy that jumped in the Pacific Ocean. They took the float plane to the Atlantic side, and 30 minutes later, he's swimming in the Atlantic Ocean. So we talk about it, how you can do that in a day. Well, these guys
Yeah.
could do it in 30 minutes.
So that's another
And
first because remember that they always hyped up the Panama Railroad as being the first transcontinental railroad before the one up in the States, and then the same thing here. The first transcontinental airline flight and the fastest one
30
was
minutes.
Balboa to Cristobal on Isthmian
so
Airways.
so the story is that this guy Sexton, when he met Charles Lindbergh when he came, just a few months earlier, and he stole Charles Lindbergh's idea that they would have this 30-minute flight from Franceville to Balboa. That was going to be Pan Am's deal, not Isthmian Airways. So they alluded that Isthmian Airlines stole their idea and started taking their business. Um,
And
I
was he
find that hard to
Zonian?
believe that someone could put together an airline in that short of time, because you have to get permission from the Panama Canal Company. Um, and all that stuff. But anyway, I think it was the other way around in my opinion. But they used to charge $10 for one way and $14 for a round trip. And it dropped to $3 during the Depression, which happened not too long after that.
No, shortly
But
after that.
do you know how much the train ride was? 50 years earlier. I
And
mean,
took how
Like
much
3
longer?
grand, was it?
70 years earlier.
Right. Golly, and
Remember?
it
I
took a
mean,
heck of a lot longer too.
yeah, and I bet that wasn't even $14 gold.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Wow,
Yeah. So I mean that's pretty
that's a
good. But
that's a nice little gig.
yeah. So that's just something. I mean, we've talked about Isthmian Airlines before, and you know what when and I just thought I'd bring this in because they started at the same time, and then Pan Am thought of them as competition.
So you had
And
so in 1929 you had Panama Canal pilots and you had Panama Canal Zone pilots, and the
yeah,
Canal Zone pilots were flying
exactly
airplanes, and the Canal
right. And
pilots were driving
you had
boats.
two airlines
Yeah,
that came out of France Field, and
these
then I
did.
guess ultimately to Balboa.
Yep,
Um,
that's
so let's
awesome.
go on to the next one. So France Field, um, they in 29 they were unhappy that all they had was this coral bed landing strip,
Right,
you know, and it really wasn't um, something they were happy with. They also weren't happy that they had commercial enterprises using
sure.
their river, because they had float planes too. A lot of we've seen pictures of the float planes out at Amador by
Well,
the
and
old
they're
Amador
military
Beach.
bases, which they're not
Right.
liking because you can be a German spy
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, I'm going to buy a ticket to fly on Pan Am," and now you're taking pictures of their military base.
Yeah. So yeah, and the float planes, you didn't need a heavy concrete runway. You could just land on the water, and I think that's why a lot of these early airlines were float planes, is because they didn't have the infrastructure set up to land a heavy
100%.
plane like that. Because we're looking at the de Havilland DHs, which are basically plywood and fabric, and didn't weigh a whole lot.
Nope.
But now that you've got these engines loaded with people and cargo, it tear up that runway, and
Yeah,
you
those
can't
metal
land on
planes.
a big bumpy land. So they needed a concrete. And so in the 30s, they started converting the field at Albrook into the concrete field that we know.
Right.
And they still had the they still had a mix of military and commercial uh, services running on the same runway. And what they ended up doing is that the the military side was basically, if you're landing, it'd be on the left side that we know as Albrook, and then the civilian side would be on the right, which would be Balboa, where
Civic.
that area would be. And then in
Sure.
the 1940s, Pan Am transitioned from float planes to the more modern land planes that required the concrete, and they started having that. Um, on the Pacific side. So they stopped their flights on the Atlantic side and started coming to Balboa. And that started around 1940 when this runway was reconditioned to be um, more suitable for heavy aircraft.
And I would imagine that that kind of was probably the era where the canal zone itself really shifted to Balboa and the Pacific side became the hub. Panama City started to grow. Now you have a
Right.
quote unquote international airport, and
Yeah.
so that was kind of the beginning of the end for the Atlantic side in its heyday, I
Yeah.
think.
And I think if you look at the old, the like populations of Gatun and stuff like that, there were a lot more people on the Atlantic side
Yeah,
back then, and I think there were
absolutely.
a lot more of the canal operations were over there. And then, like you said, it started transitioning over. It became the Pacific side started being the more dominant side, and they started putting in, especially with the war coming in and all the investment that did put into this airfield.
Right.
Um, it I think it changed the dynamic of it.
Sure, absolutely. And
So in the next
air
slide,
travel is
yeah,
coming into its heyday now around the
right,
world, and so where there was an airport was typically a capital city, a big, more bustling metropolis, and so it made sense for the canal zone to take the same form.
okay. So let's go on the next one. It's very similar, but basically it just kind of shows that we're going from in 1929 the float planes that Lindbergh flew in 29. It started changing to uh, this the service, the
Sure.
Sikorsky planes, and then later on the move to Albrook
Right.
in the construction of this new facility there that could accommodate more, heavier modern aircraft that France Field could never do. They could
Right.
probably never invest. Plus, it was in the wrong location.
Yeah.
So Albrook now became the center point. That hub switched from France Field to Albrook.
Sure. And I imagine more Panamanians are starting to get into the world economy, and so
Mhm.
it's more practical to fly out of the Pacific side for the Panamanians than it is to
Right.
Cologne.
So then the next slide goes kind of tells that story between Pan Am and Isthmian, and they both started about the same day, 4 days apart.
That's amazing.
Isthmian Airways, I don't know why they didn't start on May 4th. That's what their downfall was.
That's what it is.
But
See,
they should have started on May 4th. They day late and a dollar short, and they
that's
missed
it.
it. But
Cost them.
then just talks about the different types of airplane models that would fly in those things. And then Pan Am, of course, was backed by Washington, and they had the airmail subsidies.
Of course.
And then Isthmian Airlines was just local boys,
Yeah,
um,
that's
and then by
exactly it.
1936, the governor of the Canal Zone lobbied to cancel Isthmian Airlines contract, and then gave the route over to Pan Am, or Panama Airways, they called it,
Mm,
which was basically a subsidy
Pan Am.
of Pan Am. So I don't think I've ever seen any slides that are Panama Airways, but I'll have to go look to see about it. I've seen Isthmian Airways,
Yeah, that's
but I
interesting.
haven't but I haven't seen Panama Airways before.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it'd be interesting to
but
see
that's
what
basically
their
why
aircraft
that
look
went
like too.
away is the governor said we're not renewing your license, and
Gotta have a
um,
license.
and um, and they gave it to Pan Am. Pan Am probably lobbied, gave
Of
some money
course,
to somebody too.
of course.
But I mentioned before that basically everything south of Panama was um, Panagra, which was um, Pan American and a Grace Airlines basic conglomerate that was based out of the Grace Steamship Company. Ended up being a very um, heavy duty airline as well, but they focused on South America routes, and then Pan Am would have everything north. But it was all Pan Am. Pan Am owned a bunch of Panagra, and so now Pan Am could advertise flights, from North America to South America. They controlled that whole market.
Yeah, no, they did. And back then, a lot of your international airlines were aligned with shipping companies. right? Because you still didn't have a large infrastructure of airports. Seaplane usage was huge all over the world, and so it made sense that shipping companies had the infrastructure to do this. They had the facilities and everything, and so it was just an addition to it was another piece of equipment, which was the seaplanes, and so that's where these Grace shipping lines and stuff wanted to get a piece of that action because slowly but surely, just like in the railroad end of it, the airplane was going to start taking some of these opportunities away for transporting of passengers and whatnot. So these shipping lines wanted to get their hands on them as well, and that's where Panagra came from. That was a very famous airline. They flew for a long time.
All right, let's go on to the next one. And this is now that they're building at Albrook, um, there was civilian commercial ambitions for the Pan Am Airways, and they wanted a permanent structure to handle the international passenger traffic and cargo traffic that was going on. And the Panamanian government strongly objected it because that Pan Am was a private company,
Right.
and they were giving a private company an airport, and
And a
the
big prominent
you
company at that. It's not little. It's
yeah
not
that
Espion
that
Airways.
basically controlled all the
Yeah.
airspace all around South America and stuff. And of course the US government would say, well, we need this for military purposes. They're just kind of piggybacking off of
Right.
us.
Right.
It's there's no private thing going on yet. Who competed for that? You
Right.
can't. There's no competition. There's no other
And to
airlines.
this day, the military uses and the government uses airlines a lot to move people and
Sure.
personnel.
Yeah.
So that was an easy excuse to use.
Right. But Panama was they raised objection that this was against the treaty.
Well, think of the
And
inconvenience, right? If you're Panamanian and you're going to travel somewhere, you're going to take Pan Am, you now have to go into the Canal Zone, which back then a lot of times wasn't accessible. It was kind of a pain in the ass to get into the Canal Zone in order to get to the airport to travel. And so it
Right.
just
You
in
can't
and of
even
itself to
count
the
on it.
population, it's
Right.
a pain in the butt.
Right.
Well, and I have a slide on it later. We could skip it then, but I'll just talk about it now. But the other thing too is that if this was the international and you're leaving from Panama, yet you had to go into the Canal Zone, you also had to go through Canal Zone inspections. And
Right.
you're Panamanian, and now you have to get
You're subject to their regulations and rules.
a military inspection. Someone from the Navy or someone from the Army is going to inspect your stuff, and it's like,
Probably didn't sit
hey,
well.
yeah, it's like, what about free movement in my country?
Right. It's my country, not
I
yours.
and
Why am I
so
getting searched by an American military guy here in Panama,
exactly
my
every
own
time I want to
country?
go somewhere, and I got to go through the
Yeah,
U.S.
that's true. I didn't
military,
think of it
and
that way.
so
That's
And I'm
very
glad
true.
we're talking about this because a
Yeah.
lot of this starting to make sense on why the Canal
why?
Zone was so
Why the friction?
despised.
Yeah.
Why the friction. This is a great
Hey, well, think
example of
about it.
why.
I used to remember coming into Tacoma, and I had to get inspected by a Panamanian military. It goes National Guard, but it was
It's kind of
they
buggy.
weren't the friendliest folks.
Yeah. No, you're right.
You
You're
know,
right. You kind of get the look sometimes.
they weren't there for customer service.
Right.
They had a job to do.
Yep.
But now when you go down there, you don't have that same attitude.
Yeah.
They inspect your bags, but they do it with a smile, and they like, hey, I love your Panama beer shirt. Um,
Well, then back
but
in the mid '80s or the late '80s, you'd hand me your passport, and I'd walk you right through, and everything was fine and dandy there because
Mhm.
that was my little
You had
gig.
the
there's
you were the
something that
palanca.
intimidating about
That's
someone
it.
in a military uniform
Yeah,
and
it
a
could be
guy over
bothersome
in the
for sure.
corner with an M16 or something like that.
Right.
You're just like,
Yeah. Makes
you're
sense.
just harassing me or what? But we know it works both ways.
Sure.
But they also, the war was starting around this time too, and they set up the Panama Air Depot, which if you go like Corona Junior High School, that road that came from Hollywood
Yeah.
along the way, Corundu and all that stuff. That area was called the PAD area, Panama Air
Hmm.
Depot. Basically, it was an airplane maintenance facility, and they had originally set it up to be that it was going to be um, civilians that would do that, because if you're in the military, you got transferred out like every 2 years, and
Right.
they needed some
They need continuity.
continuity.
Yeah.
But then soon after that, the war started, and everything changed. But originally, it was set up to basically be, a large area for plane maintenance and stuff. And so all that stuff was set up, and it's called the PAD. But that's why that area was there. I never
Sure.
knew what they did there, but
But it was a series of long hangars because they were big. It was that long straight road.
yeah, but
And
they
they were
were
all on the left
yeah,
side when you're
yeah,
heading to
and
front
they
to
and
go
they
to
were
school.
basically maintaining a lot of B-17s and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right.
So we'll go on
All the
and
Karundu kids were looking the other way because remember they would throw bottles and everything at us when that's why we missed those warehouses.
That's right.
so just kind of going back to this topic about the airfield. Oh, you're on the next one. Okay, but
I went back to it.
it, it's the same thing. But the U.S. government was building this new modern air terminal in Balboa, and the Panamanians were like, "This is a private
Right.
enterprise operating in a hub in a U.S. military base." And it's violated the Panama sovereignty over its own international connections and stuff. And
I love
and
one of the justifications is like, well, we did it for 12 years, you didn't complain, so shut the hell up.
yeah,
Like
so that
that's
was
legit.
right. Well, that was. I mean,
Is it why cry now? Oh, he fell off again. But no, that's interesting, and that listen, and that makes sense because that was the main airport for Canal Zone and Panama. You know,
Yeah, we
uh,
need to find out when Tokumen came out because Tokumen.
actually, you know what? The birthday of it was last week.
I don't know. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Yeah, you're here. You're back on. You're good. Okay, he's got some connections and stuff, I think there, but
I
yeah,
lost you guys.
the Tocumen Airport, the new one just opened up I want to say
There.
gosh, I can forget the date, but it was just recently was the anniversary of it because I do remember that was really cool. That was a big deal. And remember that takes us back to remember the charter flights. Remember getting together at what you call it the transit place oh, what the hell was the name of it? Dave, where was the place
All
where we caught the
right.
charter flights?
At the corral.
Yeah, the corral. But what was that?
That's a
What was
motor transportation
motor
division.
transportation? That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
catch the buses to Tocumen from there.
yeah. But yeah, but like you said, I lost you there. So I don't know exactly what we said, but they had done the flights into France Field and stuff for a number of years, and I guess what Panama was saying, hey, you didn't, or the U.S. was saying you didn't complain when we were doing it there, so why are you complaining
Right,
now?
right.
And so we'll go on to the next one. Let's see where we're at. Okay,
Yeah, and this is again
so
talking about what you're saying there, where you arrive and you got to go through immigration, then
you,
U.S. interrogation, and it made it very uncomfortable for Panamanians.
yeah, so the Panamanians in their constitution it said that interrogations by foreign militaries and domestic flights were directly violated their Article 40, which guaranteed the citizens free transit within their own country.
Makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
And it's like, well, but not in the Canal Zone. It's like, well, it's our country, but we always that's that same argument we always have about
Yeah. Goes
U.S.
back to the
and
sovereignty
Panama.
thing. And it's
Um,
funny though, Dave, because now as you start looking at these things, you try and look at them objectively. It's hard for us as Zonians to be objective about this because we kind of feel slighted, like it was our canal zone,
mhm.
and you took it from us. But you could see where, as a Panamanian, you're thinking, well, wait a minute, why am
Yeah.
I being interrogated by a U.S. Army person because I came home into my country and I just happen to fly here, which is the only place where an airplane can land. It's not my choice,
Exactly. I mean, why didn't Pan Am come to Tucuman?
Right,
It's
exactly.
Well, maybe because they started in 1947.
Yeah, no, it
So
makes
that's
well,
sense.
almost
but what
The
I think
22
argument for
years
Panama
later.
makes sense, though. For
Yeah.
the people
But I
Panama,
think
it makes
part of
sense
it
why they
is
feel
that they
that way.
probably weren't asked. They probably just said, "Okay, you're going to come here on our base," and then no one said, "Well, why don't we do our own outside the base?" It's like
Right.
it probably saved somebody a bunch of money as well.
Of course it did. An airport's not a cheap thing to
So it's
build.
like, all right, I
Right.
don't have to put my capital dollars out there. I'll
Yeah.
just ride your coattails.
Exactly, and
So
just pull out a treaty paper and say, "Here, we got to change this."
yeah, so let's go on to the next one. And so this is the 1964 riots.
Of course.
That's the
and this
Pan
is
Am
right
building.
across from
Yeah,
the
the
Tivoli,
Tivoli.
Cinco de Mayo. And you know what building gets burned?
The
Pan
Pan
Am
Am.
building.
The Pan Am building.
That's right.
And it probably was targeted.
Oh,
Mhm.
certainly.
I mean,
In
it
in
probably
the
wasn't
50s and 60s, if there was ever an image that projected America, it was Pan Am. Because by now, Pan Am, like you referenced the movie, Pan Am was all over the world. That was the glamorous airline. That was Pan Am was it, man. Where Pan Am went
yeah,
was America.
yeah. So I could probably think of a number of reasons why this building was on fire, but I bet you it was planned to be on fire before a lot of the other
Way before,
activities
right?
were
Remember, the
planned.
Tivoli's right in front, so a lot
Yeah.
of the people
So
were staying at the
Remember, on
Tivoli.
day
So,
3,
yeah,
we go to the Pan Am building. Okay, that's part of our
yeah.
plan there. Yeah, that
you're
was
going to
all planned.
start there. They're going
Actually,
to
it was
burn
day
that thing, and
one,
then
Willie.
we'll move out from there.
Yeah.
Because your dad was stationed with his camera, with his video, right?
Yep,
Like he
sure
was
was.
probably taking that picture right there.
He was. He
But
was watching these guys do that in
yeah,
his Air Force uniform.
yeah.
Yep.
But Pan Am was like you said, a symbol of America.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably all the things that were bad with America, and
And that was a very modern building in the area
yeah,
too.
right. So, but
That's
it
true.
just goes, and I've known it as the Pan Am building, but I never knew it as the Pan Am building because it was too small, and I never went there. And
Mhm.
the first time I really ever saw a picture of it, it looked like this. So,
Right.
but none of the other buildings in the area are on fire. So,
Mm-mm. Not the Ancon
and
Inn.
yeah, so
Definitely not.
so so part of
You
it
didn't even
was
need
that
protection there. People knew to stay away from that one.
Yeah.
that arrangement just caused a lot of consternation.
Ricky, that was the only place that the Guardia was arresting people. If you tried to burn the Ancon in, they arrested you. Any other building, go ahead, burn away. We don't care.
Yeah.
You mess
Or
with that
Grant
one.
Right,
Morrison.
so
Remember, Grant Morrison was
Yeah.
owned by
uh,
the big famous actor. Coño, how could I forget his name?
John Wayne.
John Wayne.
That's
Yeah.
right. All right. So here
anyway,
we
They
go.
probably
all right, so
spare
we're going to
that
move
building
on to
too.
the actual construction of the terminal.
Yes.
Oh, right
And
on.
this terminal is designed by his name is Colonel Norman Reeby, and I haven't really been able to find a lot of information about him, but there were a couple of things that went into the design of this building. One, because they were having military aircraft and stuff flying in there, they needed it to be low so it didn't interfere with the flight paths and stuff. And we've talked about how like the Goethals Memorial
Right.
had to be redone because of it.
The
And so
approach.
the building itself was designed to be low, um, you know, low profile to keep it out of the way of aircraft being able to land successfully. And I guess we think about it and it's like there's a lot of space there, but I guess in aviation you err on the side of caution.
Sure. Sure.
And so and then it chose that Art Deco style, which typically was in a style that was of the Canal Zone.
Mm-mm.
It had its own unique style, but it kind of had that
I
long
think they wanted
flare.
it that
Now,
way. They wanted it to be unique.
yeah. So they used a builder called Tucker McClure and Thompson Markham, and I've learned that those guys did a lot of construction. A lot of the army barracks and stuff on Albrook were built by
Oh wow.
them. A lot of
Okay.
housing in Paraiso and other places were built by these guys, and so they were basically a long-term construction company out of, I believe they're out of Texas, but they
Nice.
built a lot of the buildings in that area, and they were tagged to do this project. And this project was built in 100 days,
Wow, that's impressive.
3.5
and
months.
it was wartime, and so they couldn't always get
Boy.
the steel and the materials that they needed. So they decided to use a lot of local materials, and so sometimes they used lumber, local lumber, and so like even the staircase they used mahogany.
Okay.
Um, and I remember, you go up there and it has the handrail and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and so that I guess typically they just would have used some type of metal handrail, but because they couldn't get that, they used local woods and so the next time I go in there, I'm going to look for those types of things. But they use local mahoganies. A lot of the lockers and stuff they were made out of mahogany. Instead of using marble, they used terrazzo. And I
Okay.
remember the terrazzo floors that they had in there. and then they give credit to Colonel Norman Reeby as the one that designed that stained glass,
Okay.
but I haven't been able to confirm that. I haven't found the construction drawings, but or actually who constructed it. The there's two thoughts. One is that they used um, stateside manufacturer that did the stained glass, or they did it locally because they had them the machines and the construction equipment down here in Panama with all the military and stuff that they could build it down here, and
Yeah,
also
shipping
they
glass
didn't.
is not that easy, guys. More than
Yeah,
likely, it
it's
was.
hard to do it. But the
Yeah.
other part too with the stained glass, because it's at an airport, it had to be very durable to withstand vibrations and other types of
Sure.
things. So it's not your typical stained glass that you might find in a church. It had to be like heavy duty.
Probably 1 inch
Um,
thick, minimum.
Yeah, I would think.
I don't know, but apparently somewhere I found a box number at like National Archives that I can go request and get the construction drawings and find out who actually made that
Interesting.
design, and
Well, next
apparently
week we're having an architectural segment, and one of the buildings is this building. So maybe Mr.
so
Posada will
Ricky's
have
got
all
those
that.
details. All right.
Well,
you go.
Posada's doing that
All
segment.
right.
I'm doing
But
the
apparently it
Tivoli.
was common practice for the artists to sign it like in the bottom corner,
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
not in the glass in the frame.
Yeah, I
Okay.
sign all my
So
projects. Every one of my
so
projects has my
it's
name
there.
somewhere on it.
But
Art
I
vanity.
thought that was interesting that they would use like Central American hardwoods and other stuff
That's
in
cool.
that, just because they had to draw from local stuff. And so that building actually probably is one of the more local builds
Sure.
than
It's
you
got the
would
most
find
local
in
flavor to it.
other stuff.
Interesting.
So that, so we did talk about the low profile,
Right.
and then Art Deco design, and the control tower was up there. It we can't really, it's been converted, but and then the passengers came in from the back end there, and then it talks about how you would run into military um, checkpoints and stuff. But that's what the building looked like when it first opened. The white kind of sleek um, Art Deco type building,
Sure.
and then go on to the next one. World War II happens, and then there's a mandate that they have to camouflage it. So they take that white, that brand new white building, and then they
Yep.
had to paint it olive drab to comply with the wartime camouflage regulations. And they had to hide the commercial parts of it away. I guess all the lighting had to come off and those types of things. And
Right.
then this also talks about the Panama Air Depot expansion that they did, because they had, you know, combat squadrons that would come in and they need to
Sure.
be
You're on
serviced and
wartime
all
footing
that
now.
stuff. So all that area was set up primarily to service warplanes.
What's interesting that I see that also mentions there is that civilian housing was abruptly pressed into military service because suddenly, you brought in probably extra squadrons of aircraft and whatever else to serve and protect the canal because you're in a war situation now. And, you have two options. You can either build more barracks and housing, or you got some civilian housing here. Hey, get these people
I
out of
think
here.
they're talking about most of it is that area of Corundu Heights
I was
and
going to say,
stuff.
it's probably Corundu. That would make sense.
They were originally going to be civilians,
Right.
but then with the war, they had to scrap it and
Sure. It makes
make
sense.
it be military again.
Because it's right on the end
And
of the
so,
field.
yeah, right,
Interesting.
on the east side there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that they were designed for one reason, and then war changed it, and it gets repurposed, and then everything gets expanded because they've got hundreds of warplanes now instead
Sure.
of just
Well, this
just
next
the
one here, this is an amazing picture here because I mean that
yeah,
it almost looks surreal, right? That it's like, wait a minute, that's that same building. And look
the
at that
same
picture,
building. They had to paint it all olive drab.
completely painted. It just doesn't. Wow. Other than the shape and the background, but you can kind of recognize the hills and stuff there. You
Mhm.
know, that's really a trip that was that same building.
Yeah,
And if you
Ancon
just
looks
go
kind
back
of
to you go
small.
here it is
That's
here
that's
and
um
day
that's
one,
that's
day
Albrook.
two.
Oh,
Albrook
that's
is
Albert back
behind
there.
it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. This is taking it from Ancon across Gaillard Highway, or
Yes, right. Like from the rail line.
yeah,
That's a
the railroad
trip,
track.
man. What I mean, it really is just wow, completely
Yeah,
painted that way.
the flagpole's in the front there,
Yeah,
and then
yeah. This
Well,
is
that is
this
the
one here,
parking
but from
lot.
a slightly different angle.
let's-
But there's a
so
tower and
let
everything.
me just explain. So when in the center of this, it was designed to be the lobby. So you walk into the lobby, right?
Yep.
And on the on the left side was where they had the restaurant, food service, and stuff like
Okay.
that, which makes sense with why it became the drive-in later.
Yeah. Right. Of course.
And
It
then
was already there.
um, then like Pan Am offices and stuff were on the second floor, and then they had on the right side would be the
Probably the
inspection
passenger terminal.
areas,
Yeah.
different things like that. So
Yeah.
that's what it was originally set up for. Is that the lobby's in the center, and then you had concessions, and the mail processing was in there too, because the mail was delivered there, and then but it was basically was set up as an airport,
It sure was. Sure
and
was.
that was the layout.
That's so crazy. That is
Right.
so crazy. I feel just, and you sent me this several days ago, but I keep seeing that picture. I'm like, man, that's the building, completely painted.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
So the next one shows it completely painted now, on the backside,
Oh yeah, look at that.
and but you can see the Pan Am Airways airplane out there
And
loading
the
up
truck, the
with,
equipment, which
with
tells me that's one
gas.
of their bases.
But you can see that the first one I showed you, it was all white, and now
Hmm.
it's all drab.
Yeah, look at that.
Um,
There's all white.
and then the next photograph is what it would look like in color. These
Yeah.
planes were, these aluminum planes. The other one you can't tell it, but it says Pan American World Airways on
Yeah.
there, and this would fly right into Balboa, and people would get off, and it was said. In the text, it says on the south side of the airfield was a commercial air terminal that was camouflaged but used by Pan Am during the war. Um, and then it says this plane crashed into the sea shortly after takeoff in Puerto Rico in the 50s. So,
Wow.
but the other thing is that a lot of Hollywood movie stars and people would come and to get off the plane here. And so it was a big thing for everyone to go to the airport and look for Clark Gable, or look for Vincent Price, or
Oh, there you
look for
go.
these stars getting off the airplane and coming in, maybe going to the Tivoli, or maybe taking some other flight to some other part of the South
Sure.
America. Some of them you read about the
Oh, and that's when you
stars
would
going
probably
down
see
for
the
some movie premiere or something like that in Buenos Aires, but they might have stopped here.
well, even like the
Or-
baseball teams arriving for winter
Right,
ball.
right.
They'd be flying
I
into
didn't. I
right
didn't
there.
actually. I forgot to put that picture in here. I think, but I one of them. I had the Yankees.
Oh, right on.
They
Okay.
came in 46 and 47,
Yeah. And played in
and
Balboa Stadium.
played
Lou
at Balboa
Gehrig, was that
Stadium.
his time?
No, it was Joe DiMaggio,
All right.
Right. Okay. That's cool, man.
Yogi
Yeah, and they
Berra,
played in Balboa Stadium, man. The
and
New
they
York
and they
Yankees.
played against gosh, why can't I think of his name? Jackie Robinson.
Yeah,
Jackie Robinson was on a team called the Montreal Royals, I
the
think.
Royals,
It was
correct.
and when they finished up the series, it was preseason. They went up to New York, and he was hired by Brooklyn Dodgers.
Hmm. He's promoted because that was a
Promoted,
farm
yeah.
team for
I
them.
mean, uh, so but they would have flown right in and out of the stadium. So I mean, this airfield. So they had a lot of.
Yeah, this was the only airport at that time.
That was it. They didn't have. And then this is the kind of looking good. That's the airport hangar that we always drove by across from the football field, and that's the one that was destroyed during Just Cause. If you remember seeing
Well,
that
partial.
go,
Remember that thing also had that major fire, the Kane brothers fire.
right,
That
right,
major fire there.
hmm
I
right.
remember that.
And the way it was set up was that the civilian side, that was a civilian hangar for the civilian aircraft,
Right.
and all the hangars on the other side were for the military aircraft.
Correct.
So that's how they divided up this airport. And my dad, when he landed I think it was 52, he landed at this airport, and he
Oh
was
wow.
picked up by his new commander, and
Right.
they drove him out to Amador where he was stationed.
That's
But
so
that's
cool.
where he told me he remembers flying into Albrook Field.
That's awesome. A
And
great memory.
to me, it didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time because I didn't
Sure.
realize it was an airport. But now it makes complete sense. Everybody did.
Now
Um,
here's some other irony there for your dad flying in there, because if you guys recall, the approach path flies right over the schools. So
right.
here this guy, all of a sudden fast forward, and here you are in the school that you flew over, in much younger area, much younger era, I guess, or time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he if he looked out the right side window, he could see Balboa School, which he
That's what I'm
became the
saying.
principal of. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Here he's looking at
Yeah.
that, not even thinking that, hey, in a few
And
years I'm going to be the principal
yeah.
here, and
Yeah.
you
And
know,
if he flew in over Amador on the way in, at least the way the Air Panama flights come in, he flew right over his barracks in
right?
Amador. So,
That's so cool.
um,
That's so cool.
all right.
That's something I don't recall. I didn't experience it growing up. Was aircraft landing or taking off in Albrook, because by then it had pretty much shut down as far as air traffic goes. You had very sparingly something that probably came in for repairs, on the maintenance school end of it. But when it
Yeah.
landed there, it stayed there. You
Yeah,
know.
I remember like DC-3 type planes coming in, and these little, like, I don't know if they were Beechcraft or whatever, they weren't very big
Right.
planes. And helicopters would come in.
Yeah, the
Hmm.
helicopter, you would see
Uh,
that a lot.
but
By
I've
the,
seen
by
a
then
lot of
Howard was the main
photos,
airfield.
like photos of like B-17s flying right over the Balboa High School. I mean, just
Yeah.
feet above it coming in. It's like, wow, that must have been something. Then you see pictures off the admin hill.
Yeah.
Looking out, and there's like I don't know if they were B-52s, but some type of big bomber airplane flying in there. Like you could see through the cockpit
Well,
from there,
there's
that
a
like that
picture
low.
in CZ Images.
Hmm.
Bill McLaughlin has a picture of somebody on Sosa Hill facing Balboa, and they're right in the middle of the picture, and it's technically below him a little bit, is a Pan Am DC-3 landing in
Okay.
Albrook, because
Yeah.
once it passes Sosa Hill, it's pretty low. It's close to touchdown at that
Well,
point.
now if you fly into Albrook on Air Panama, like when you go up to Bocas, they fly out of there.
Yeah.
You are really low. It's amazing
Right.
how low you are when you're going in there. Even out from Amador, you're pretty low.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're just feet off the ground, really.
Yeah. It really is.
Um, but yeah, but all these big bombers used to go
Sure.
in and out. They were all doing reconnaissance and stuff, and it was amazing. I mean, you've seen the pictures of all the planes that are lined up in
Well,
Albrook
can you
Field during the
imagine,
war.
if you're living in Balboa, and maybe go up on the admin there. I think it was, what was it, in 47, whenever they had that big exercise where they had it all the way up to Rio Alto and stuff. I mean, you had a bunch of aircraft at Albrook at that point. So when they started
Mhm.
flying those in, that must have been a sight to see a bunch of
And
bombers coming in one after the other.
I was at Florida Field at Gainesville one time, and someone with a B-29 buzzed the stadium. You could hear that thing coming from a mile
Yeah,
away,
they're
man.
loud, dude.
And they're loud.
Yes, they are. That's what I'm saying. Can you imagine maybe
They're
being in
loud.
school, in BHS, you're in class, and all of a sudden you hear that rumble, and it's a few feet above you coming over that building and landing, man. That must have been a
Mhm.
sight to live through that. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Okay, so that's the airport side of it, and then this stained glass was, I think is a masterpiece in there. I mean, it was it
100%.
was so you had to look at it every time you went by it.
Yes, you couldn't
Um,
miss it.
and there's a couple of things that were designed into this. One, we looked at those prop planes, so you can see the propeller
Sure.
in the stained glass,
And the
and
wings.
then it has the wings, like the Pan Am wings that are
Hmm.
coming in, and yeah, I would have never really known what that is, but now knowing the history of Pan Am, and that building was basically theirs.
Right.
Um, and they let the military use it, in my opinion, kind of, but it was probably the other way around. But then in Panama and the U.S. is shown prominently, and then the other flags are the other South American countries and stuff
Nice.
that was served. So that's what this represents, and it kind of it says in here the crossroads of international commerce.
Right.
and a projection of hemispheric solidarity.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
and you
kind
know,
of it,
and I think it's round on purpose. Kind of gives it a compass look to it, which again kind of gives it that center point of Panama versus a square rectangle image. You know, I think it
right.
purposely was done that way round. It's pretty cool. It really is iconic, and
So
it's a
like
shame
yeah.
what happened to it.
Yeah. So they give it the credit
It's
to
not there anymore. It's gone.
You'll see,
no, it's gone. I'll
Oh.
and
but
it's
they give
and
credit.
how it's gone is what's really shameful.
Hmm.
You'll
All
see. I'm
right.
not.
They
That's
give
Dave's thing.
Freebie as he was in charge of the construction project. So at the moment, we have to give him the credit as the one that designed this thing.
Makes sense.
Um, but it could have been one of the architects at the McClure.
More than
But
likely, because that's
we'll
what they do.
uncover it at some point.
Right.
But all right, let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
We just kind of talked about these
Yep.
already, but all right. So the next one is that um,
It kind of
that
encompasses the whole story of that terminal,
yeah,
how it transformed, the zone, and in and of itself was a transformative piece.
yeah, yeah. It says that it was a fiercely guarded military airspace,
Right.
and single photograph could lead an espionage charge, and then it also metamorphized into an aviation hub, into a library, and the stained glass window endures the ultimate testament to Pan American Airways' original vision of replacing geopolitical borders with a network of hemispheric connection. And I think they to some degree they did that. They were able to
Sure.
to link the world. I mean, we could fly down there anytime, but at the here in the 40s you couldn't.
Right. Correct.
So this was pioneers in their
And there was
own
a time when
rights.
you could buy it with Pan Am. You could buy a round the world ticket, and you started one, and you would literally fly through
Right.
all their connections and cities,
Sure.
and end
Right.
up coming all the way back around the other direction, all the way around the world. I mean, they
Yeah.
really did do that. It was, how they
So
went
yeah.
about it sometimes was a little bit little shady, but Pan Am did connect the world without a doubt.
So this airport basically was the hub for all of that, all
Yeah.
of South
Wow.
America and North America. And it'd be interesting to find out what percentage of air travel went through Panama. Was it 100%?
Yeah,
Um,
because you didn't have
you
a
know,
lot of long range flying. I mean,
could you?
that
Yeah,
that
I mean, you could go to like Havana or something like that. But did you go to Havana? Maybe from Caracas you could go to Havana, but it didn't have to go through Balboa. But a lot of times they probably had to go into Balboa and then
right.
travel on. So, like I said, I don't know if it's 100%, but it's probably pretty close.
I would think
All
so.
came through this one spot. So, how many people came and saw like this, and that might have been their first impression on like something American,
Yeah. Yeah.
because this was
Exactly.
basically an
Their first view
American,
of America.
yeah,
Because if you fly over,
American
like you
building.
say, landing in Balboa, you're seeing America.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
I'm glad they had this thing to look at because I think it's
yeah,
pretty impressive.
that's pretty cool.
And hats off to whoever designed it and built it and got it there. But again, it had to be something that was very durable
Right.
to withstand a lot of things. But going to the next one. Oh yeah, another
Yeah, let's
thing that
talk about
happened during
Banana.
World War II that I didn't realize. When you talked about the Corral and we'd go on our trips, we always took Braniff Airlines.
Mm-hmm.
But during World War II, with all the German U-boats in the Caribbean, it was not safe to have ships in there,
Right.
and Braniff was used kind of as a lifeline to bring supplies down via air. So they
Mm-hmm.
came out of Dallas Love Field and Texas, and they would do this Braniff run to bring supplies to the Canal Zone, and the planes would be empty, and they would fill the planes up with bananas and send them back to the United
Yeah,
States.
because they're sending this to supply the zone in the military, so they're going to be empty flying back. It's not a trade situation. It's just simply supplying one forward area.
Yeah,
They
And
got a bunch of empty
Chiquita jumped
it's
space.
in.
like I never heard that.
No,
I mean,
never
so that's
realized.
like
I didn't never. I knew Braniff did a lot of stuff, like Vietnam flying people and stuff, but I didn't realize that they were that big into the zone. I always thought it was just Pan Am. That's
yeah, I
interesting.
didn't I didn't either, and it's like wow,
Yeah, that's so
but
cool.
bananas, just put
Hey,
bananas in there. I mean, of all the things that to put in a cargo hold. But
Bananas
I
have played
guess
a
they
big
were.
role in Panama's history, man, and to this day it still does. Those damn banana
But
people,
I never heard that.
right?
But
That's a
I just thought
trip.
that was interesting because we always took Braniff as a charter flight,
Yeah,
and I
exactly.
guess we were just another bunch of bananas
Exactly.
flying in
The irony.
coach.
The irony. Uh,
So, but I just thought, for like Zonians our age that experience that Braniff, that would be something
yeah, heck yeah. Now
to
you know where the
know.
Brandon
So I
story
threw
came
that
from.
in there. And the other interesting thing that I found is that during the war they had a lot of aircraft coming in and out and stationed out of Panama. One of them was an XB-15, and they called it this one they called Grandpappy, and it was a big cargo plane. And the U.S. had set up bases all over the Caribbean. There was like 150 different bases
Right.
um, in South America, and one of them was in the Galapagos Island on Seymour Island, and it's out in the middle of nowhere.
You're right.
And so they needed to get their supplies from the Canal Zone. So Grandpappy was used to fly supplies
Ah,
to Galapagos Islands, probably other places. But this, so it was Canal Zone was used basically to supply other posts all around the
right. And
Caribbean
that
that were
Galapagos
You
is
know,
anywhere
I
other than the
guys,
U.S.
looking for U-boats and all that stuff.
speaking of the
So when we
Galapagos,
talk,
the Galapagos is like 2 or 3 miles closer to Ecuador than Panama. Otherwise, they would have been Panamanian island.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
super duper close.
That's amazing. Huh. Yeah, that's not a whole lot, man. You know?
so
And those are
the
famous islands.
interesting thing about the history of the Grandpappy, going to the next one, is that it 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 got damaged and just they had to take it apart. And at that pad area, they pulled it apart and scrapped it, and then they threw the carcass. They talked about putting it in the swamp on the east end. And so the pad area, if the east end of that area would be like around where Corundu Junior High was,
Yeah,
or
right. That's what I was gonna say. Where the
Hollywood
pool
was.
was.
I'm not exactly sure where there would be swamp in that area, but
Well, probably where the
um,
fields were, because remember you kind of went down a little bit to some of those
right.
fields.
So they put that ship in there. I mean that airplane in there, and then I read a story where some of the guys that demoed that when they came back years later, they said they could see like parts of the airplane still sticking up out of the
Oh,
swamp,
wow.
but over the years it would sink, and so it would get like hidden. So some kid that goes running around in there might run into Grandpappy one
Yeah, no
day,
kidding.
and if
Interesting.
it's in there, but it's buried in that area.
Huh.
But I just thought that was kind of interesting to
Yeah.
that something from the 40s that was still there.
It was easier to bury
Years
it than
later,
than
they
remove
could
it.
they could see it in there.
So the French
But
weren't the only ones to abandon equipment and bury it.
yep.
We're doing it too.
Well, they
Uh,
had plane crashes there too, and I
yeah.
imagine they just scrapped some of that
Oh
stuff,
yeah,
and
sure.
and um
So
and that's
here's like a
probably where some.
storyline then of what that whole building went through.
Yeah, this is it was the aviation hub for South America in the 40s, 40 to 46.
Right.
But then in 46, they built Tucumán Airport,
Mm-hmm.
and so then you had some competition. They also moved the private company out of
Sure.
Balboa,
Get Pan Am out of
and
there.
it stopped being an airport.
Sure. Well, and
Um,
World War II had finished now, so
right.
even that draw up had gone down again.
Yeah. Yeah. So by 46, between 46 and 50, it stopped being used as an airport, and then it's been repurposed. And one of the things that it was repurposed for is that kitchen area that was part of the airport became the drive-in,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
they should probably call it a drive-up because you really couldn't drive in. But
Right. Right.
I remember going there as a kid,
Yeah.
and
Remember that?
but it makes
It was a
sense
treat.
why they would make that into a food service because they already had the kitchen in there.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
they were just repurposing stuff that they
And it
had.
had a large parking area, which would make sense for
Yeah,
that type of a
sure.
gathering. And
Right,
late 40s, early 50s was when that kind of driving craze kicked in everywhere.
right.
So, it
hmm
was a great place to do that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that this graphic shows like a '57 Chevy
Yeah,
in there,
right.
with like that driving that
Very
type of looking,
era-like.
very
Love it.
yeah. And then it also became the museum, the Canal Zone Museum, which originally was housed in the administration building.
See, I don't remember that.
And well, it was because it was moved in the 50s.
Ah, there you go. That would make sense. Okay.
Yeah, and I think they repurposed those off that into offices and other types of things.
Okay.
But they moved that museum that was down in the admin building to this area, and then they also got other people that had collections to basically have their artifacts on loans. So there were like
Sure.
dishes and other types of clay pottery and other types of things. I remember looking in the cabinets, and they had all this pre-Columbian stuff in there and other artifacts. A lot of that was just on loan from older Zonians and stuff like that. But they
Didn't we
also
get our
had
license there too?
Hmm.
we did, and then the library was moved there. So those were some of the um, you know the way that building was repurposed, and then Ricky, as you mentioned, there were other functions that it was used for, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Let's go on to the next one, and
This is Helabert.
uh, this one, kind of the other part of this history um, corresponds with Marcos A. Gelabert, and if you go to Albrook Airfield now, the terminal that they have, the airport's called Gelabert Airport, and he was born in Havana, so I imagine he was Cuban at the time, but eventually he migrated to Panama in the early 20s, and he served as a pilot in 1931 in the new Panama Air Force, and then he in the 30s he founded a commercial airline, and and um, and in 1947, when the Tucumán Airport opened up, he became the administrative director of Tucumán Airport. And now, um, 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 it says Paitilla Air Paitilla Airfield and the civilian Albrook Airport were named in his honor. So I guess they're both called Gelabert, or one
Well,
was
Paitilla doesn't
Paitilla
exist
was
anymore.
Gelabert, and now
Yeah,
it's moved to
and it's
Albrook.
Helabert. It's pronounced Helabert, but yes,
Gelabert.
that was Marcos Helabert was the Paitilla airport, and when they shut that one down, they moved all those
Okay.
operations, including Aeroperlas, etc., to Albrook and renamed it that as well.
So he has a parallel history with that era, and
Right.
so now when you go there and you see that name, you can associate it with, basically he he was there, in line with the aviation history in Panama. So it
Yeah,
it
I
seems
took my
like
first flight lessons out
it's
of
an
that airport.
appropriate naming of that.
Hmm.
Um, but we all know it is Albrook, but
Right.
um,
Yeah, no, it was, and even the airport in Paitilla. That's where I flew out of there to go to Contadora on Aeroperlas. They would fly out of there on those Twin Otters, and my first flight lessons were out of that airport
see.
in Paitilla too. It
So
was
I guess
really
I
cool.
flew out of that Gelabert Airport because I flew out of there once. We went to San Blas
Hmm. Yeah,
on
all of
Mr.
Aeroperlas.
Dr. Weldon's plane.
There you go.
So, all right. So the next one, it's the shift. Basically, 46 old the Tucumán Airport opens up, and an aircraft from Copa made its first
That's right.
landing.
Wow, they've been around that long. Huh? I didn't know
Copa's
that.
been around for a long time. Yes.
And so then Tucumán becomes the country's primary international hub. They don't have to go through. Well, I guess you couldn't go through. They closed Balboa, but
Right.
part of it was that commercial side of it is now coming to Tucumán.
Hmm.
And that's why we always got in the bus at the corral and went out to Tucumán
Correct.
versus just just riding our bikes to the Balboa Airport.
Right. Yes. Yes, indeed. Yep. Those charge flights. Those are great, man. Get up early in the morning. Be there. It was still dark when you got there.
Oh yeah,
You know.
oh yeah. You had to get up like
Because you're at
way
Tucumán
early.
Airport by like 6 o'clock in the morning, and you're landing in Miami at 10 o'clock in the morning, so you catch your flights over
Right.
the U.S.
But even though the terminal was opened, the U.S. still had control over the final say of what happened. Um, with airspace and all that stuff, and that also continued to fuel the anger
Hmm.
with the U.S. is that we just can't get away from you guys.
Yeah, and the
You're
FAA ran
always,
the towers and everything. Even into the 70s, the
Mhm.
FAA was running most of the air traffic in Panama.
And it also talks about a a confrontation that ended in a few deaths over this.
Mm,
And so, this is in the 40s.
right.
And we know about 64, and then sometimes I mention the 50s, and people are like, I don't never heard about riots in the 50s, but they had issues in the 40s as well.
Sure.
So it's been long, it's been simmering over the years and stuff, but these things just don't make a lot of headlines.
Right. Right.
But on this show, you're going to learn about those types of things.
That's right.
And then going on the next one, we kind of had a slide earlier that talked about different things going on, but um, the drive-in, the library, the museum, the artifacts upstairs. I remember going into a rapid transit movie of the canal. It would be a time lapse, like you could go through the canal in like 8 minutes,
Right.
and the ship would go really fast up and down through the locks and then through the cut and stuff, and go there. I remember watching that as a kid, and um, you mentioned those boats that they had, the wooden boats. They
Yeah.
had dredges, old French dredges, and other types of ships, and just a lot of things that as a kid you just loved looking at all the stuff
Right.
in the window. But the thing I remember most about that building was the AC was phenomenal.
Yes, I do too, man. I
It
remember
was
that.
always ice cold in that building.
Yes.
It was amazing.
That's
You had to
hilarious.
go with a jacket almost. It
Well,
was,
wasn't that to keep us awake at the library?
I don't know. It
Maybe.
was,
Or
Kind of
keep it
like in the
quiet.
theaters, like why they make it so cold so you stay awake.
Yeah, that'll keep you quiet.
but
Yeah, that
but
too.
it also had, the like you said, Ricky, the license bureau was there. You got your driver's license there. Um,
Marriage
it
license for
also
what I saw in one of the comments.
it also the recreation department was housed there.
Yeah.
The schools division was housed there. My dad later became a data processor, and his office was on the ground floor there. He would take us there after hours, and he would be doing work. Back then, they had the punch cards
Right.
computers,
Mm-hmm.
and so he'd be running the punch card computers, and we'd see all those cards, and it was always fun to play with those things. And you'd see him going in the machine, and he had a Xerox machine. Back then, it was like one of the first photocopiers and stuff. And when you're 5, 6 years old, that stuff was just
It's fascinating.
amazing.
Yeah.
This and the smell of the that
Yeah.
Xerox
Yeah.
fluid and
A
stuff and all that
mimeograph.
mimeographs. And those machines made a lot of noise too.
Yeah, they did.
The stuff, but we'd go into his office,
We
and of
used one
course
of those
you'd
machines.
have to walk by all those artifacts that were in there,
we
and then
had
of
we
course
had
we could all.
at Copa Airlines at the airport in Tocumen in the 80s. We still had a mimeograph machine that was hand cranked, and we would type up our passenger list and run
Yeah.
them through there and crank the list out because you had to have one for San Jose, for Managua, for San Salvador, for Guatemala, and then run them all out to the aircraft before it leaves. And that was the thing even then, like they did in the old all the 80s movies. They hand you that paper. What does everybody do?
Mhm.
You smell it because
Yeah.
that pink ink had that smell to it that was very unique, man. That's a
Yeah, but
trip when you said that.
his entrance into that was from the back, so we'd always go in through the back side, and they
Oh,
had,
right on.
the hallways would have all these cases with all the old artifacts in it and stuff, and then of course, as a kid, you just want to run the hallways, and it had those terrazzo floors, and you'd run up
Heck
the
yeah.
stairs, and but the fire department and the police departments, they were moved there. There used the school division used to be in the Balboa school, and then they moved it to this building. The fire department, police department, there was a police station across the field from Balboa school that got torn down, and they got moved
Yeah.
there. The recreation department was there,
Man,
and
that was a big
then the
wreck.
post office. The post office offices were located in the old control tower on the top.
Interesting.
Uh, and so there and Canal Protection was there. So they
Huh.
use that as an office building for many different
Yeah, repurposed for a lot of
things.
different things. Interesting.
And they also, when they were building this building, they had thought about different names to call it. One of them was going to be the C.V. McIlvaine building.
Okay.
And C.V. McIlvaine was the first executive secretary of the Panama Canal Company,
Okay.
1906 to 1940. And that you probably recognize the McIlvaine name. There's a lot of there were McIlvaines around
Right.
when we were there, but they're long Zonian family.
Sure.
Some wanted to call it the Goethals Building or Goethals Hall, and
Okay.
have a bust of Goethals in there. But the governor at the time said, "No, we're just going to call it the Library Building." But
That's
then in
so
19
creative.
yeah, and this basically it was dedicated May 22nd, 1950. I think it coincided with the creation of the Panama Canal Company.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's about the time it entered in. But so they thought about different names to call it, and the Civic Functions Building was one of the titles, and then later on they changed it to the Civil Affairs
Right.
Building, and so
Makes
that's
sense.
how we know it. But it's had a
Okay.
lot of different uses. FAA
Yeah.
was there as well, um, and then license section, of course,
Right.
was there. All right, so this picture that you have on there, this is showing the library bookcases being lowered into the
Sure.
building, and making it the library. The library was on the second floor, and so you could see they pretty much gutted it and
Yeah.
then repurposed it for offices.
Right.
Probably didn't
Right.
take them 100 days though.
No. That's
And then I
cool.
have a photograph of the inside of the library. It's not really how I remember it, but this is an older photograph.
Yeah. I don't know if I even visually can see the library itself, but like I said, I do remember the boats and the glass cases, the models when you're going up the
Mhm.
stairs. Those I do remember because I'd always stop to check them out when we would go in there.
Yeah. I do remember a big table in there.
Hmm.
And it was like I think it probably is mahogany
I would think.
table, and it's probably like the hardwoods that they used
Sure.
from Panama to build that thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that they had in there was the next slide. In addition to that Panama Canal movie, they had this giant map of the canal, and I remember like the buoys were marked with little red and green lights in
Oh,
that
how about
thing.
that?
And this was like made out of rubber, but it was like a relief map, and it kind of had some like I think he's pointing like Burra, Colorado Island or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that in
Sure.
this. But that was something that they had there, and like those wooden ships would be in the cases around that. Um,
Okay.
but different things that you could. It was all
Kind
canal
of a tribute to the
related.
canal.
Yeah,
That's cool.
so you might remember that if you were there long enough. And then the
Right.
next one, this was in the last or one of the editions of the Panama Canal Review, and you can almost see it says license sections in there, and that kid in there is Herbie Rayburn getting his Panama Canal ID,
Oh, that is Herbie, isn't it?
and his mom.
Sure is. Look at that.
It's like you
Uh,
said, you like to read some of these things and say, "Oh, I know that person."
that's
And
right. That's right. That's so cool.
but this tells the story of Colonel Reed and how it got funded, and how
Okay.
Pan Am Airlines
Right.
established flights there, and then the drive-in. So it's kind of the history of what we
Yeah.
just talked about.
Well, that's
You
cool.
could have read it in 5 minutes or spent an hour with us.
Right.
But
Exactly. There you go. Exactly. But it's not nearly as fun. You know, not nearly as fun.
and then so
That's
it,
very
it
cool.
talks about the different names that they were going to call it, and then all the different organizations are in there. So if you're interested, you can go look at that old Canal Review.
Yeah. No, that's really
And
cool.
then to Ricky's question, is it still there?
Oh yeah, yeah. Hold on.
Go on to the next
I'm
one.
back. I'm back.
Yeah, he's back here. There you go.
It froze
All
up on me.
right,
The final
this one
fracture.
in 1979, this area was turned over to Panama as part of the treaties. But in 1989, in Operation Just Cause, it was a casualty of war.
Mm-hmm.
It got shot out.
and directly shot out. It wasn't like the rest of the building. I mean, there was other parts of the damage, but you can.
Yeah, it was definitely a purposeful shot.
Yes, yeah, no
And
kidding.
so I have this one photo that I found. What it used to look like.
That gives you a great
It's
perspective of where it was lined up in relation to Ancon across the street. That's pretty cool.
yeah,
That's a great image.
yeah. And I
And
lived
there
right
you go,
across the
Ricky.
street there for a
Huh?
little bit. I lived across the street from there.
Oh, did you? Okay, cool.
Yeah, on Bayano Street.
All right, right on.
Yeah. And
And then here you go, Ricky. Here it is, and I'll go to get this full screen so you can
Yeah, I was going to
appreciate.
say Just Cause had a lot of action in that building. Had a lot of action in Just Cause.
Yeah.
So I guess that's
but all the glass is gone. The frame's still there, so it must have been shot out by
Right.
Bullets
Well,
and
and
stuff.
you can see in front of that car there's fencing there, so that area must have already been fenced off. I wonder.
I think it
Interesting.
was like
Well,
the police
became
station.
it became other things. We didn't talk about it, but I got my driver's license there, but I got it through Panama
Right, but even
when I
the
got my
Canal
driver's
Zone
license.
Panama license plate was in that place as well.
Yeah,
Because I
and
remember going there to do it as well.
the drive-in became a Dairy Queen.
Right.
And so yeah, there were other things
Yep. The
that
drive-in
were
was a Dairy
used
Queen. I
for
remember
it,
that.
but I went in there for my driver's license, but I don't think that building was public like other. I mean, like you could just go run around it. Maybe you could, but
In some sections you could, but they did have Panama did end up putting their own driver's license section in there as well. I do remember getting one in there and a couple times going there because I think one of my cousins may have worked there.
let's just
One of
say
those.
it didn't feel like it was inviting at that time.
No, definitely
For me.
wasn't. Definitely wasn't. It was definitely a Panama bureaucratic building at that point.
Yeah. So, and the air conditioning wasn't on.
The air
So
condition. That left a big impression with you, man.
it did, man. So yeah, it got shot. I found this photo online. I don't know who took it, but
Yeah.
it's one of the only ones I've been able to find
Yeah. Well, I mean,
with
that
it in
was an
this
iconic
condition.
that glass. I mean, that was recognizable. I mean, and there's a kind of a
Just
fitting way of throwing it
all
back
right,
in there.
all right. So I'm just saying that I fixed it.
There you go. Look
I
at
just
you.
put it back. The only problem is that it's backwards.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's the
Because you have
trivia.
to, to really
you gotta see
to
it from
appreciate it. You
inside.
had to see it from the inside.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
From the outside, you don't get that same reflection.
Yeah, you don't have that same light pouring in.
Yeah, so from that, and you can
That's funny.
some of the other photos that we show, you can't even see it.
That's one of
It
those
just gets hit. It just
trivia
gets
things.
hidden.
What's wrong with this picture? And if you really know, it's backwards. It's reversed. That left
You have to reverse
looks
it.
like should be on the other side.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's very cool.
But so that's where it ended, and that's how I just just love that medallion, stained glass, and I didn't know really what happened with it. I think I'd seen that photograph about Just Cause before, but
Didn't put two and two together.
I saw someone asked a question about it recently about whatever happened to it, and
And as
but
Paul Harvey said, now you know the rest of the story.
yeah, but that building had a lot of history that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, it did. It had a lot of transformations. It served
and
a
it
lot of
really
different
had a
purposes.
vital role in the Canal Zone and beyond.
Yeah.
But
And a lot of friction with Panama too.
Yeah, no doubt. And a lot of it makes sense now. When you put it that way, it really, I can, again, I could see where somebody in Panama that is traveling around, why do they have to be hassled by the Canal Zone if they're not even dealing with the United States? I'm traveling from Panama to
Wherever.
Cuba,
Yeah.
Nicaragua, Costa Rica. What do I got to deal with you guys?
but
In
it
my own
definitely
country.
it definitely was a multi-purpose building.
Yeah, certainly was. Certainly was. Well, that's cool, man. That was a good story, man. A lot of good history there. A lot of great graphics. It's really cool to see that one, especially for me. I'm an aviation lover anyway, but the Pan Am plane with Albrook in the background, and that colorized one. It looks. I mean, that's you can see that's only a few years before we were running around those areas. Looking from the train station, before Rams practice, and we could be able to see Pan Am planes in the fields out there and stuff like that. It wasn't separated by that more than maybe a decade and a half, 2 decades. To see that kind of stuff.
How
Imagine
convenient
doing
would it
Rams
have been to
practice and a
have a
Pan Am
commercial
plane's landing
airport in
overhead.
the Canal Zone?
Yeah, man. It's what a unique place Canal Zone was. Every month we find out something else more unique about this place that we just took for granted, and we're like, man, wish I'd known about it back then. I would have gone to see it and paid attention to it, instead of wishing now and being like, well, that's what we have left, So, well,
Well, I
cool,
look
Dave.
forward to
Listen.
hearing Ricky's architectural talk next week.
Yes, we're going to be talking about that here in just a moment and getting ready to do that here. And then what have you got? Well, no, actually, next month is your break because, well, no, actually, you know what? Next month, depending on you, I'm not sure what your schedule is because normally it's reunion, so we don't have, we don't do a show that first week, but the reunion's the second week in July. So you
I'm
let me know
doing.
if you're
I'm going to do some discussions of the Goethals Memorial and
okay.
Stevens Square.
Circle. But it's a square. Okay, I get you.
Ah, look at that. He threw that in there and then he paused for a moment.
I thought I was being smart. I should have known better with David.
Yeah, there was a pause for
It was
effect
actually
there,
called Clubhouse Square, but
Oh,
Okay.
really? Well, I get it. Why? I got
Interesting.
the clubhouse is another building I'm going to do because that's like the civil affairs building. A lot of transformation.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. So
Yes,
I want to pick out some of these icons and just kind of show how they came to be. Of course, the
Well,
the
let's do the
Goethals
clubhouse together.
Memorial's still there, and so is still Stevens Memorial. So
Well, maybe like for August, you guys can do focus on the clubhouse.
Yeah, let's do a
Ricky on
show
the
together if
architecture
you
end,
have
you on the
time.
history end of it.
all
Hey,
right.
now that you mentioned Stevens and Goethals, and remember back in the day, we always say, what happened to Williamson? Why didn't Williamson get a place?
Right.
Well, guess what? There is Williamson's place
There you go.
right behind the Balboa
Elks.
police station. And Elks, yeah, that's Williamson's
Okay.
place. And guess who designed the new? Remember, that used to be all barracks, the wood,
Yeah.
multi. Mr. Grimison was in charge of that project. So one of the things that Richard might want to talk about is that Williamson's place.
That's going to be awesome because there's Mr. Grimison played a big role in a lot of the later construction in the zone.
Yes, we also talk a lot about the boats that bring the ropes to the boat. I mean, to the big ships going through the locks, right? What was that those little guys called? The handlers?
Yeah, the line handlers.
The line handler. Well, Mr. Grimison also designed the line handlers building. Where they all work, all come in. We should ask our captain to take a picture of that. But Mr. Grimison also designed that.
No kidding. Right on.
So all the iconic things, the remodel of
I
St.
think he
Mary's
was
Church.
designing the new tugboat.
Oh, we lost him. Richard didn't mention that, but I'm sure I'll bring it up to him. He normally calls me on Saturdays to go over the
Right
show.
on. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's gonna be cool to see that stuff because that's another big piece of it there. So there he is. He's back again.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I keep losing you guys.
yeah, no,
It's David. This time of the night, at least on the West Coast, it's the busiest. So you're gonna get a lot of traffic.
Yeah,
That's
I
why
don't know if there's
every week I'm on this time. It kicks me out.
But, well, listen, Dave. Again, a great show. Very
Yeah, that was
informative.
fun, man.
A
That was
lot of
good.
fun, and it was a place that was right under our nose. We all looked at Albrook. If you went to Corunna Junior High, you passed right by all of those buildings every day, twice.
We would go to. We didn't even talk about the ices. Getting an icy there,
Right. Well, somebody mentioned it in the chat that they went to get there. I think it was Jim Duffus mentioned it.
Jim. Jim.
But yeah, it was. I mean, this was an iconic place, and I do remember the drive-in component of it. I do remember the library component of it to a certain extent. But it was just one of those places that was unique to the to that Canal Zone nostalgia because it wore many hats, so to speak. That one picture that showed the hangar next to it, I do remember that fire vividly. My dad had, took a lot of pictures of it as well, from, the police and everything. And that was a major fire, guys. That whole thing was, I think, didn't the whole thing go up in flames?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was just a massive fire in the middle of the night too, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, a lot of cool history that you always bring to us, Dave. We really appreciate it. Looking forward then next month then to that whole Stevens Circle Square, Clubhouse Square, and see what the story behind that is, and it'll be nice to piggyback off of what Ricky's going to be doing with his architecture. So, Dave, have a wonderful weekend. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to educate us, and we look forward to talking to you next month, man.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
guys.
All right.
Have a good one, man. Take care.
All right. Bye.
See ya. All right, man. That was cool, man.
Gracias, David. Yeah, no, a long show, but always worth it when it comes to David's history.
It was a really, really cool story of a place that at one point was the major air terminal for that, and then like he mentioned, when you get that friction out of there, it makes sense, because
Back then it was the hub of the world. Today we're still the hub of the world.
Isn't that amazing how that works every
man.
time? The hub just uses different forms of transportation, but it went from Spanish galleons, to ships, to railroads, then ships, then airplanes, and now all of them again. So cool. But hey, guys, it is the month of June, so that's one thing we've been talking about here. We're really excited about this. A new feature we're going to bring in is this architecture piece. Okay, as you guys know, Ricky is an architect, so this is his backyard that we're going into now. But the Canal Zone has some very unique architectural pieces, and this is what he's going to delve in. He's going to bring some really cool guests on that are going to help out with this as well. So, Ricky, I'm excited for it. I can't wait to start seeing what you're bringing to the table here, because man, architecture really is, there's some unique stuff in the zone that I'm looking forward to. So anyway, the bus is telling us to get out of here, so kick the weekend off for us, Ricky.
Thank you, guys. Once again, a lot of you guys stuck with us the whole way through. We truly appreciate that. This is why we do this. Thank you. We'll see you guys next week, same time. We love you very much.
Take care,
See you
guys.
guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks.